All right, everyone, we are back to the courtroom for the afternoon session. Dr. Shannon Curry is on redirect. We ask you to please share, like, and subscribe to our channel. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Please feel free to type your comments and your opinions in the chat. All righty then. Thanks a lot. This court, the judge is now issuing in the jury,
Have your seats. All right.
and
Cross-examination.
we will be watching for them, the jury being seated. All right, let's get to it.
Dr. Curry, you're not board certified, correct?
No, I'm not.
Not in clinical psychology or in forensic psychology, correct?
No, I'm a licensed clinical psychologist.
But you're not board certified.
No,
Okay. And you also have only been practicing approximately 8 years, is that correct?
that's not correct.
How many years?
I've been licensed for 10 years,
Okay.
and I've been practicing for about 15 years.
Okay. And that includes what you went through with your different trials in Hawaii and everything else that you testified to, correct?
Yes,
Okay. Now, you went to Mr. Depp's home for dinner and drinks before you were hired as an expert in this case, correct?
that's not quite right. I was interviewed at Mr. Depp's home by his legal team. Dinner was served.
You, in attendance with Mr. Depp was Adam Waldman, correct?
Yes,
Ben Chu, correct?
yes,
Camille Vasquez?
yes,
Okay. And the dinner lasted approximately 3 to 4 hours, correct?
yes,
And it included
The interview.
drinks, correct?
yes. Dinner and I believe drinks were served.
Okay. And this was before you were hired as an expert, correct?
Yes, this was an interview so that they could make an informed decision as to whether or not to retain me.
And don't you think that's a little odd that you're getting interviewed by Mr. Depp to decide whether you're going to testify adversely against Amber Heard?
I was interviewed by the legal team.
And Mr. Depp was present. It was his home, correct?
Yes,
And he was serving dinner and drinks.
he was
correct?
not serving dinner and drinks.
Well, it was at his house, at his behest, correct?
Yes, it was at his house.
Okay. And you were contacted by Camille Vasquez, somebody you knew in the community, in February of 2020. Is that correct?
I knew of Ms. Vasquez professionally. We live in the same city, and I work with many attorneys.
Okay. And at that time, you not only knew Johnny Depp, you'd seen a number of his TV and movie roles, and you believed he was a good actor, correct?
Not correct. I did not know Johnny Depp. I
Well,
had
you knew
seen
of
several of
him.
his movies.
You knew who he was.
Yes,
Right. And you believed he was a good actor,
yes,
correct? Okay. And then you provided an expert designation in this case before ever seeing Amber or having an opportunity to review any documents or records. Isn't that correct?
I did not provide an expert designation. That's an attorney thing. My opinions are contained in my report.
Let's pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 884, please. This was plaintiff's designation, identification of expert witnesses in this case. And this is dated February 2021. That's a year after you went to dinner at Mr. Depp's house, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And it attributes, if you go to page 13, it says you have 3 opinions. The first of those is that Amber Heard, quote, exhibits patterns of behavior that are consistent with co-occurring cluster B personality disorder traits, especially borderline personality disorder. Did I get that right?
I'm reading that here. That is not my opinion.
Okay.
Well,
but
it's a current
attributed-
opinion, but this was not an opinion of mine then. I didn't have any opinions at that time.
It says Dr. Curry will testify, correct?
That's what it says, yes.
Okay. And this is a signed pleading, correct? On behalf of Mr. Depp.
I'm not sure I understand what that means.
You don't understand what a signed pleading is?
No,
Okay. Do you understand that Mr. Depp's counsel prepared this and served it on Ms. Heard's counsel?
I'm not an attorney. I don't understand necessarily all of these procedures.
Okay. Are you aware that Mr. Depp is on an audio recording years earlier taunting Amber Heard that she has a borderline personality disorder?
I was made aware of that in this case, yes.
So you did that
Actually,
one of the audio
not
tapes
necessarily
you listened to?
taunting, but I do recall hearing that Mr. Depp had used that phrase.
So it's a coincidence that you now think she has those attributes after the attorneys listed it in February 2021 before you'd looked at anything, and Mr. Depp had made that accusation to Ms. Heard years earlier.
My opinions aren't based on coincidence.
It's objection. I'm
Okay.
sorry, Dr.
All right, sure.
Yes. Compound, I'll sustain the objection.
All right. It's a coincidence then that you came up with symptoms of borderline personality disorder years later after Mr. Depp has been taunting Ms. Heard in an audio tape.
I
calling her.
can't speak to whether or not there's a coincidence. What I can tell you is my opinions are based on the results of my evaluation.
And it's a coincidence that Mr. Depp's counsel attributed that to you, that said that to you in February 2021 before you'd looked at anything, correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Now, would you agree that a disproportionate number of women are tagged with a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder?
No, that's not quite right.
75%?
The way you phrased it is not quite right.
Tell me what's right.
Okay, so there are more women who have been diagnosed with bipolar disorder than men. It's more prevalent in women.
And trauma can cause borderline personality disorders, can't it?
No.
Never?
Right now, we know that there are people who have borderline personality disorder who have sustained childhood trauma. There are also people who have borderline personality disorder who have had no childhood trauma. So like most personality disorders, and really like most mental health issues in general, there seems to be both a biological component. In this case with borderline personality disorder, the research tends to support a genetic component and possibly a neurological component. And then there is also possibly an environmental component triggering those genetic markers.
Do you know the percentage of women who are victims of IPV, intimate partner violence, or domestic abuse who are diagnosed with borderline personality disorders?
I can't tell you the percentage off of the top of my head, but I do know that there is a larger, women with borderline personality disorder tend to have a higher prevalence of being involved in intimate partner violence relationships, being the receiver of violence, and being the perpetuators of violence.
Now, you've never been asked to testify or serve as an expert with respect to whether someone has a bipolar disorder. Is that correct?
A bipolar disorder?
Yes.
That's not correct.
Okay. Bear with me.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you recall having your deposition taken in this case?
Yes,
On March 21, 2022?
I believe that was the date, yes.
And were you under oath at that time?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to ask you to turn to page 207. And the question was, have you ever been asked to testify or serve as an expert with respect to whether someone has bipolar disorder? And your answer at that time, will you please read to the jury?
I'm sorry, page 207?
207, line 5. Could you
No.
read? Okay, thank you. Now, when this designation was served in February of 2021, you had not rendered an opinion that, quote, Ms. Heard exhibits patterns of behavior that are consistent with co-occurring cluster B personality disorder traits, especially borderline personality disorder, correct?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part. What was that?
When this designation was served that you have in front of you as Plaintiff's Exhibit 884,
Oh, okay.
you had not rendered an opinion that, quote, Ms. Heard exhibits patterns of behavior that are consistent with co-occurring cluster B personality disorder traits, especially borderline personality disorder, correct?
No, I had not rendered any opinions. My opinions weren't finalized until after my evaluation.
Right. So when this came out, you had not rendered that opinion?
I had not rendered that opinion.
Okay. The second opinion that's listed in the February 2021 is that Ms. Heard repeatedly and characterologically perpetuated severe physical and psychological intimate partner violence, IPV, toward Mr. Depp over the course of their relationship. End of quote. Did I read that correctly?
It says perpetrated, but other than that, yes.
Okay. And so is it correct that this pleading says in February 2021 that you are going to testify to that?
This document, yes.
Okay?
It says that.
And you have never been asked to testify as to whether anyone has behaviorally or characterologically conducted conduct that suggests they may be an IPV perpetrator, correct? I have to ask that again because I stumbled. I can't do characterologically. That one's just a tough one for me. Okay. You have never been asked to testify as to whether anyone has behavioral or characterological conduct that suggests they may have been an IPV perpetrator, correct?
No, I've never been asked to testify for that.
Okay. And that was not your opinion in February 2021, correct?
No.
And in fact, you do not hold that opinion now, and you were not even asked to provide such an analysis or opinion. Isn't that correct?
No. Or that is correct,
That's
yes.
correct. Okay. And you have never held that opinion, correct?
No, that is correct, yes.
Okay. And your third opinion, if we can go to page 14, was that Ms. Heard exhibits patterns of behavior that suggest her allegations of abuse against Mr. Depp are false, end of quote. Do you see that?
I see that. You said it's my third opinion. That is not my opinion.
All right. But in this pleading, it says that you will testify to that, correct?
Yes, that's what this says.
Okay. And that was not your opinion in February 2021, was it?
No, as I said, I had not formed any opinions at that time. I had just been retained.
And in fact, you have never arrived at this opinion as an expert witness in this case, correct?
In terms, no, the opinions that I've rendered are provided in my report.
And
they're what I'm testifying to today.
And you have never arrived at this opinion as an expert witness in this case, correct?
I'll sustain it.
You have never arrived at the opinion that Ms. Heard exhibits patterns of behavior that suggest her allegations of abuse against Mr. Depp are false, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And in fact, you've said that has never been my opinion, correct?
What I'm saying is that the opinions in here, these are not my opinions. My opinions are provided in my report.
Can you please turn to page 255 of your deposition? And if we could start on 254 to give the
I don't
context.
have that page, I'm sorry.
254, line 11.
Oh, okay.
And the question is now, the next one is, quote, Ms. Heard exhibits patterns of behavior that suggest her allegations of abuse against Mr. Depp are false, end of quote. Was that your opinion in February 2021? And you answered at that time, no, correct?
That is correct.
And then I asked, have you ever arrived at that opinion in the time that you have served as an expert witness in this case? And your answer was, could you read that to the jury, please?
Yes. So no, it's not the task. I was cut off, or essentially what I said then was, no,
Dr.
that's
Curry,
not the task of Dash. That was never my task to determine. Can I say what that means?
No. And then the question is, so is it fair to say that you have never arrived at an opinion that, quote, Ms. Heard exhibits patterns of behavior that suggest allegations of abuse against Mr. Depp are false, end of quote. And what was your answer?
Well, there was an objection.
All right, I'll read it for you if you're having difficulty.
no,
Your answer was under oath, correct. That is not my opinion. That has never been my opinion. Isn't that what
Correct.
you said under
Yes.
oath on March 21st? Okay. And then I wrote, then I'm going to ask you, do you know who wrote this portion of the designation suggesting that these were your opinions in February of 2021? And what was your answer?
I said no.
Now, as of the time of this initial expert designation, you had not reviewed any materials, reached any opinions, correct?
I believe I had just started to review materials. I believe that I indicated that in my deposition. I had not yet rendered any opinions. I hadn't completed my review, and I hadn't conducted an evaluation.
Okay. And in fact, you've never testified as an expert on IPV, intimate partner violence. Isn't that correct?
I believe that is correct, but I may not be remembering all of my cases.
Oh, let's go to page 200.
Okay?
Line 17. My question was, have you ever testified as an expert on IPV? And your answer under oath then at line 22 was what?
Oh, gosh, let me catch up. Line 22. No.
And you've never testified as an expert on emotional distress damages associated with IPV, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you've never been asked to testify with respect to emotional damages associated with domestic violence or abuse, isn't that correct?
Again, I'm reluctant to say that's correct because with 15 years of experience, a lot of my cases have been complex, and that may have been a component, but I don't remember explicitly a case being just about that.
Let's go
Correct.
to page 199, line 20. My question to you was, have you ever been asked to testify with respect to emotional damages associated with domestic violence or abuse? And your answer under oath at that time was?
No.
I've not, right?
Sorry, I
isn't that
hadn't
what
found
you
the
said?
page in time,
Okay. You said, no, I've not.
but I have
correct?
not.
Okay. Now, you also have never been asked to testify on whether an individual is being truthful in saying that they are a survivor of IPV. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you have never qualified as an expert to speak to whether a person suffered from IPV, intimate partner violence, or was a victim or survivor of IPV. Is that correct?
That's outside the task of a psychologist to determine whether an event occurred. We assess behavior, we assess mental status, we don't detect crimes.
So you have not been asked to testify to that, correct?
It's not something that occurs, so no, I have not.
And you were not ultimately asked to provide any opinions on that, correct?
No, I was not.
Okay. Now, you did not disclose in any of the designations or your report that you had met with and had dinner and drinks with Mr. Depp, did you?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Yes,
That
you did
confused
not
me.
disclose in any of the designations or in your report that you had dinner and drinks with Mr. Depp, correct?
I did not disclose that I was interviewed by the legal team, no.
I asked a different question. Are you trying to resist that you didn't have dinner with Mr. Depp and drinks?
I'm not trying to resist that, but it's not quite right.
You
What
did
you're
have dinner
stating.
with Mr. Depp, did you not?
I did, with
And
his
you had
legal
drinks
team
with
and
Mr. Depp,
Depp.
did you not?
And what?
You had drinks with Mr. Depp, did you not?
Drinks were served. This was over 2 years ago. I may have had a drink with dinner, yes,
In fact, you thought you had a mule something, right?
possibly.
Yes, okay. And you didn't disclose that you had met with Mr. Depp, Mr. Waldman, Mr. Chu, and Ms. Vasquez at Mr. Depp's house for 3 to 4 hours and had dinner and drinks, correct?
I did not disclose that. It's not significant to the report.
You don't think that's significant, correct?
I don't.
Okay. But you've never been asked to meet with a client in his counsel before being retained as an expert, either before or after, have you?
No.
And you justified that it was okay in this case because it was a high-profile case.
That's not quite right. I justified it in this case. Actually, I sought consultation about it. First of all, the person who had retained his attorneys was unable to come to my office with his attorneys. And yes, this is a very visible case. It's been going on a very long time. And I understood that there would be a need to interview me and make an informed decision about my qualifications.
Can you look at page 240, please? Line 3 is my question. Would you agree it's highly irregular to meet with the subject in a litigation? And your answer on that occasion was, I would not say it's highly irregular. I would say it's not something that I would typically do. However, I had not yet been retained on the case. This was a large, high-profile case, and I understood that I believed that it was appropriate for a person retaining me with such a high profile to meet me, to be able to vet me, essentially with the attorneys present prior to retaining me on his case. Do you recall that?
Yes.
That's what you said under oath, correct?
Yes.
And then I said, have you ever done that before? And you said, no. Correct? And then I said, have you ever done it since? And you said, no. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, would you agree that if you did not find something that would be in favor of Mr. Depp and negative to Ms. Heard, that you wouldn't be an expert in this case? That I can bring you into court if you're going to say that Ms. Heard is right and Mr. Depp is wrong, correct?
So as a forensic psychologist, my obligation is to the court, is to the fact finder. I present science regardless of what that science may be. Now, when I take a case, my retainer agreement is explicit about that, and I discuss that with the attorneys.
I'm asking you a question. I'd like you to try to answer my
Okay.
question. You understand that if you found favorably to Ms. Heard and negatively to Mr. Depp, you wouldn't be here, right? You wouldn't be testifying.
Objection speculative.
No, okay, sorry.
Hold on. The objection is speculation.
That's not speculation.
Oh, I'll sustain the objection if you want to ask.
Okay. If it goes to bias, Your Honor.
I sustain the objection. Next question.
Okay, all right. You were, in fact, so excited about being involved in this case that you told your husband, even though this was a highly confidential matter, that you were going to be conducting the examination of Ms. Heard, didn't you?
That is not accurate.
You not only told your husband, but you told Ms. Heard that you told your husband, correct?
Ms. Bredehoff, that is not accurate.
What is accurate?
You're incorrect. That is not correct.
Is your testimony today under oath that you did not tell your husband that you were going to be conducting the examination of Amber?
That is my testimony.
Okay. Let's go to page 306. So the question that was asked was because you brought muffins, you said, from your husband, right? You gave those to Ms. Heard, correct?
May I clarify what occurred so that we can stop talking about the muffins? What happened was that I was getting ready that morning. I frequently bring muffins to the office. My husband did happen to know that there was going to be a celebrity client coming in because on the mornings that occurs, which often occurs, we have to actually clear the office and move the staff to the other office. So yes, on the one hand, he was aware of that. I was getting ready. I asked him to go to the bakery near our house and pick up the muffins for me because I was running late. He often has to do that because I often do run late. He brought the muffins back to the house. I brought them into the office. Ms. Heard and I enjoyed the muffins together. I think I made a comment to her along the lines like, we can thank my husband, my husband got these for us today, meaning he purchased the muffins. We are now enjoying them because of him.
Did you say on pages 305 and 306 that you frequently have examinations of high-profile clients? You want to just take a quick look and tell us?
What, 305, 306?
Yeah, that's where we're talking about it.
Is there a line you'd like me to look at?
You can start with 15, line 15, 305. Just read through that and tell me whether you said anywhere in there that you have a lot of high-profile examinations. You do this frequently.
Objection to improper impeachment.
I don't agree.
Orange approach, please.
So why did your husband get the muffins for Amber Heard?
He did not get the muffins for Amber Heard.
He knew you had a high-profile client, and you were preparing for a very long time, and you asked him to pick up the muffins, correct?
I asked him to pick up the muffins for me, yes.
Okay. Now, would you agree that domestic abuse can be verbal?
Absolutely, yes.
Would you agree that domestic abuse can be emotional?
Yes, certainly.
Would you agree that domestic abuse can be psychological?
Yes,
Would you agree that domestic abuse can be physical?
yes,
Now, you indicated, and I believe you testified in your direct, that it's very important to review the treatment records before forming opinions. Is that correct?
yes.
Okay. In fact, that's the first thing you would do, correct?
Not necessarily the first, but it's part of the evaluation.
Let's go to page 261. And let's go to 260 because that's where I start the question. The question I asked was, and do you recall whether you'd review any of these by the designation on February 19, 2021? And you said, okay, I can't say for certain. What I can tell you is that knowing my normal procedure, I would have reviewed the treatment records first. Did you testify to that under oath then?
Yes.
Okay. Now, before we start getting into the ones that you testified about, I just want to be really clear about what you actually have as an opinion with respect to the borderline personality disorder and the histrionics. You didn't diagnose, you didn't actually have a DSM-5 diagnosis that Amber Heard suffers from either borderline personality disorder or histrionic personality disorder, correct?
That's not correct.
In fact, your report says Ms. Heard demonstrates psychological symptoms of a combined borderline and histrionic personality disorder. Would you agree?
Yes, I did say that in also what designation was that? I believe January 18th that report was included? Yes.
Okay. And that's what you said at that time, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I said a little bit more than that as well.
You said, and I'll read it, I'll quote it, quote, based on the combined results of my interview with Ms. Heard, behavioral observations, psychometric test data, and review of the available records, Ms. Heard demonstrates psychological symptoms of a combined borderline and histrionic personality disorder, BHPD. That's
Yes.
what you wrote in your report as one of your conclusions, correct?
And that's a DSM-5 diagnosis.
And it did not say that you were diagnosing with a DSM-5 for borderline personality disorder or histrionic personality disorder, did it?
That's what it says in different semantics.
Oh, so what you meant to say.
It did not use the words you just said.
Now, let's talk about the treatment records that you said that you reviewed. But I'm going to start with Rocky Pennington. Your testimony was that out of the blue, Amber hit Rocky Pennington, correct?
I can't remember exactly what I said, but I did reference Ms. Pennington's deposition that Ms. Heard struck Ms. Pennington in the face.
In
Yes.
fact, Ms. Pennington testified that she hit Ms. Heard. And in response to that, she can't recall, but Ms. Heard either pushed or slapped her, correct?
I don't recall.
That's a pretty important distinction, don't you think?
My recollection is that there was some sort of violence both ways in the relationship. Either way, it seems that both of them might have been unstable. I'm only evaluating Ms. Heard.
So now we have an evaluation of Rocky Pennington?
No, I just said, but that was not relevant to my opinion because I'm only evaluating Ms. Heard.
But you testified to that on direct that that was a factor, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, wouldn't it make a big difference if Amber struck first or just responded back?
Given the dynamic, not necessarily. No, it would not have.
So now you're an expert on Rocky Pennington and her dynamics with Amber Heard. I'll withdraw.
This is sustained.
Okay, so now let's talk about Dr. Cowan. You not only reviewed his treatment records and his text messages and documents, but you also attended his deposition, did you not?
Yes.
Okay, and do you recall Dr. Cowan testifying that Amber told him about Depp physically abusing her contemporaneous with the events?
I don't recall specifically his words, but I remember him recalling that she had disclosed abuse in their treatment, yes.
And do you recall Dr. Cowan testifying that he received a text message contemporaneous that Johnny did a number on me tonight. I'm safe in my support tonight, but I need some real help. Do you remember him testifying to that?
I don't remember the testimony, but I do remember seeing that text message as one of the exhibits.
And do you remember Dr. Cowan testifying that on another occasion, Amber sent him a text, Johnny beat me up pretty good last night, end of quote.
Again,
Not in this instance. She can rely on it. She testified.
Overruled.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. I didn't need to argue that hard, I guess. Do you recall that?
Again, I don't recall the testimony, but I do remember that being an exhibit. I've seen it.
Do you recall Dr. Cowan testifying that not only did he believe Amber in her reporting of the abuse by Depp, but that she had no ulterior motive?
I actually don't recall that. I'm not saying that it didn't occur.
Okay. Do you recall Dr. Cowan testifying that he believed the relationship was toxic and he was concerned for Amber's physical well-being?
I do recall him saying that he believed the relationship was toxic.
And you don't recall
I do
Dr.
not.
Cowan saying that he was concerned for Amber's physical well-being?
I don't remember those exact words.
Do you recall Dr. Cowan testifying in that deposition that you were present for, referring to Mr. Depp, quote, his controlling nature, jealousy and suspiciousness, addiction to drugs and alcohol, and violent and indulgent temper? Do you recall him using those terms to describe Mr. Depp?
I remember thinking that would be an inappropriate impression for a treating provider of a different person to give, but I do recall him making that statement.
Do you recall Dr. Cowan testifying that if he pushed her, she was going to push him back? And I never had the impression that she was the provocateur, but that she was indicating to me she had a hard time, de-escalating these types of situations.
Yes.
Okay. And do you also recall him saying that she didn't say she pushed him, she just said, I got right back up. She told me that he pushed her down and she got right back up.
I remember him saying that Ms. Heard told him that, yes.
And do you recall him testifying, you could interpret it that way? I kind of interpret it more, metaphorically, that when somebody comes at her, she goes back at them, in a similar way, whether it's verbally or she protects herself. Do you recall that?
I recall something along those lines, but it was a 6 or 7 hour deposition, so the specifics are not fresh in my mind.
Do you recall Dr. Cowan specifically testifying that he believed Amber Heard when she reported the physical abuse by Mr. Depp?
I recall him saying that and following it up with a statement that you have to take the patient at their word when you're the therapist.
You recall that?
Yes?
Do you recall him saying he took her, that he believed her? That he found her believable?
Yes, that he found her believable.
Okay. Now, you also testified about Amy Banks. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And before we go there, Dr. Cowan has been a clinical psychologist for 40 years, correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay, well, he testified to that, didn't he, in the deposition?
I don't recall.
And he also saw Amber Heard for over 2 years, correct?
Yes.
From 2014, approximately August 2014 to 2016, correct?
Yes, he did.
For a period of time, would you agree? Okay. And he also testified that he did not diagnose Amber with borderline personality disorder. Do you recall that testimony?
He also testified that he doesn't use diagnoses, but yes, I do recall that.
And do you recall that it was in, those words were in his notes, but he said he had written that down, but then he discounted and determined that that was not correct for her?
Oh, you want to approach?
All right, now let's jump to Amy Banks. Dr. Banks is a psychiatrist, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, she went to medical school at Georgetown, and she did her psychiatric training at Harvard Medical School, correct?
I believe that's correct. I don't recall 100%.
All right, and she was a psychiatrist in Massachusetts that Amber Heard had reached out to
Yes.
after the Australia incident to try to help her relationship with Mr. Depp, correct? Let me back up. You attended Dr. Banks' deposition as well, did you not?
Yes, I did.
And Dr. Banks testified to that, correct?
I don't remember if she testified to that. I don't have the notes right in front of me or the deposition transcript.
All right. Do you recall Dr. Banks testifying that she understood that Amber was in a relationship with Johnny Depp that had gotten violent and out of control?
I don't recall specifically, no.
Do you recall Amy Banks testifying that they had physical altercations and his drug use had escalated and Amber felt she was at risk?
I don't recall.
Do you recall Amy Banks testifying that Amber was reporting the violence by Mr. Depp and it was not consensual?
I recall Dr. Banks stating that Ms. Heard was reporting violence to her, yes. I do not recall a statement about consent.
Do you recall Dr. Banks testifying that there was discussion about Mr. Depp cutting off his finger, and she said only that it was a middle of one of these very kind of out of control escalated fights, and that did make a fairly big impact on me?
I remember something like that.
All right. And do you recall Dr. Banks saying it was a whole other level? As I remember, it told to me he actually cut off a part of his finger during one of these altercations, meaning to me, the way I digested that, if you will, was that things had gotten particularly out of control.
I do not recall that exact statement. I'm not saying it didn't occur. I just can't recall it.
All right. And you recall that Mr. Depp was in sessions with Ms. Heard with Dr. Banks, correct?
Yes. My understanding, however, is that they met with Dr. Banks, and then it was primarily Ms. Heard meeting with Dr. Banks for treatment after prescriptions and therapy.
All right. And do you recall Dr. Banks saying that she was not surprised that Amber was seeking a restraining order because of the violence that she knew existed in the relationship?
I do recall that, and it would be impossible to know that violence exists as a treating therapist or as a psychologist. Again, we're not investigators. However, I do recall that she said that because I remember having that thought.
And do you recall Amy, and she's a psychiatrist, right?
Psychiatrist.
Okay. And do you recall Amy Banks saying that it was clear to her that Mr. Depp was the one who initiated the violence?
I don't recall that.
All right. Do you recall that Dr. Banks said that she knew for certain that Mr. Depp was the one who had committed the violence because Ms. Heard reported it in the presence of Mr. Depp and he did not contradict?
I do not recall that.
Okay. And do you recall that Dr. Banks ultimately concluded that it was her belief that Amber was a victim of domestic violence at the hands of Mr. Depp?
Here, you want to approach this?
And what was your answer to that last one? I'm sorry.
I think I can't recall, but I also can't recall that last question.
Do you recall that Dr. Banks concluded that Amber was a victim of domestic violence at the hands of Mr. Depp?
I don't recall that.
Okay. Now, you also reviewed the records of Laurel Anderson and you reviewed her deposition, is that correct?
Let me refresh my memory for a moment. I reviewed Dr. Anderson's deposition, yes.
Okay, and do you recall that she reported that Amber Heard had reported physical violence by Mr. Depp to her?
I recall that she said that Ms. Heard had reported that, yes.
Okay, and do you recall that she said that it changed over time?
I don't recall that specifically.
Okay, and do you recall Dr. Anderson saying that she had witnessed her face being bruised after the December 15, 2015 incident?
I don't recall that.
You don't recall that, okay. And do you recall that Dr. Anderson said that Amber had reported that he had pulled out her hair, bruised her face, kicked her leg, and hit her in the head?
Yes, Ms. Heard did report that to her according to her testimony.
Okay. And do you recall that Amber Heard said that Mr. Depp was scaring her?
I don't recall that specifically.
Okay. And do you recall that Dr. Anderson said she believed that Amber Heard was a victim of domestic abuse at the hands of Mr. Depp?
I recall, no, I don't recall that statement.
All right, let's go to Bonnie Jacobs. You said that you reviewed the notes from Bonnie Jacobs, correct?
Yes.
And what you testified to was that you discounted these because the first notes from Bonnie Jacobs indicated that she already had all of these symptoms, correct?
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying. I discounted.
Tell me why you discounted Bonnie Jacobs' notes.
I did not discount Bonnie Jacobs' notes.
You said that Bonnie Jacobs, in her notes, had already determined that these symptoms were present for Amber Heard before the relationship with Mr. Depp, did you not?
What I recall saying was that within Dr. Jacobs' notes, she's documented instances in which Ms. Heard reported to her over the course of therapy that she was experiencing nightmares, recurrent nightmares, in fact, about childhood abuse.
Okay. Now, the very first entry on Bonnie Jacobs' notes, and these are the notes, right? Do you recognize these?
I do, and we
Okay.
received more sort of at the tail end just a couple months ago.
All right, so the first of Bonnie Jacobs' notes is on 10/17/2011. Do you recall that?
I don't recall the exact date. I don't have anything in front of me.
And Amber Heard was already in the relationship with Johnny Depp at this point, was she not?
I believe she was, yes.
Okay. And in Bonnie Jacobs' notes, she documents
However, go ahead.
multiple occasions that Amber Heard reports to her physical violence upon her by Mr. Depp, does she not?
There are several notes that indicate that Ms. Hurd has reported violence by Mr. Depp, yes.
Many, correct?
I wouldn't qualify it as many. I'm not sure what you mean by many.
How many would you say?
I don't know. I don't have the notes in front of me.
Okay, well, what do you recall in deciding to make your opinions in this case?
Well, I'm confused about the dates because I know that Dr. Jacobs treated Ms. Hurd even while she was in her prior relationship, leaving her prior relationship with her last wife.
Dr. Curry, I'm not going to ask you to try to bring in extraneous things. I'm asking you what you recall of these
But
notes.
the dates would have been different based on that alone.
Okay.
And I recall that there was quite a bit of information because these were copious notes spanning back in time from her relationship with Tasha.
So, Dr. Curry, please answer my question. How many occasions do you recall
I don't know.
Dr. Jacobs documenting Amber reporting physical abuse?
I don't know.
Now, you also said that you listened to audio tapes in this case, correct?
Yes.
Did you hear Mr. Depp admitting to headbutting Ms. Hurd?
That is not what I heard.
You didn't hear that?
I heard a conversation about headbutting. I did not hear him, as you said, admit to headbutting Ms. Hurd.
Okay, that's your characterization of it, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see the videotape of Mr. Depp in the kitchen?
Yes.
Okay, did Ms. Hurd imagine that or create that, or was she responsible for that somehow?
Objection, I respect it.
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Okay. What, if any, impact did that have on your opinions watching Mr. Depp in that video?
I'm not sure it was one of many pieces of the exhibits and other collateral data that I considered. I'm not sure what the direct impact was or if that could be measured.
All right. Now, counsel asked you whether you had conducted any type of examination on Mr. Depp, and I believe your answer was no, correct?
No.
You did not review any medical records or psychological records from Mr. Depp either, did you?
I reviewed all of the records that were available.
Do you recall reviewing medical and psychological records on Mr. Depp?
Yes.
Do you recall Dr. Blaustein referring to Mr. Depp having rage?
No, I actually recall him referring to Ms. Hurd in that note.
Your testimony is that Dr. Blaustein was referring to Amber Heard as having rage?
I transcribed several of the notes, and I may be missing a time when I said that about Mr. Depp. The handwriting was very difficult to transcribe, but there was one instance in which I recall transcribing him stating that Mr. Depp reported that Ms. Hurd had rage.
Dr. Blaustein's deposition was taken, was it not?
I don't recall.
Do you recall, so I take it then you don't recall him testifying that Mr. Depp told him he had rage and demons?
I don't recall.
Do you recall Dr. Blaustein testifying that Mr. Depp looked at his wife, Amber, like his mother or his sister that he didn't like?
I haven't seen his deposition. I don't recall that.
Okay. Now, did you see and do you know whether Mr. Depp has ever been diagnosed with any personality disorders?
That's not relevant to my task to conduct an evaluation of Ms. Hurd, so I do not know that he has had one. It was not in the records that he did.
All right. So one way or the other, you don't know whether Mr. Depp suffers from any personality disorders.
That's not my task.
Okay. Let me go to IPV perpetrators. Would you agree that accusations of infidelity can be considered one of the characteristics of a personality perpetrator of IPV?
It can be a characteristic of a lot of things. It is something that can be weaponized if somebody is trying to or is having rage toward their partner.
Let's go to page 270. Line 3, my question was, are accusations of infidelity considered one of the characteristics of a perpetrator, a personality perpetrator of IPV?
The objection.
The question is vague and ultimately ambiguous.
I don't understand the objection.
I'll overrule the objection.
Okay. And your answer under oath
Can
at
you
that
remind
time?
me of the page? I thought
Page
you would-
270, line 3 was where my question was.
Okay.
And your answer is at line 8. You said it can be, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And interrogating your partner about unfounded accusations of infidelity can be abusive. Would you agree?
it can be if they're unfounded, yes.
Okay. And psychological consequences for a victim of IPV can include diminished self-esteem, correct?
Yes,
Depressed mood,
yes,
anxiety,
yes,
fearfulness,
certainly.
diminished self-agency,
Yes,
feeling powerless,
yes,
loss of sleep.
yes,
An IPV is a traumatic stressor. Would you agree?
it is.
All right. An IPV is capable of resulting in PTSD, is it not?
It is.
Okay. An IPV is capable of resulting in other trauma-based disorders, correct?
Yes,
Okay. Now, Amber's medical examination, she was cooperative, correct?
her psychological, yes, she was cooperative and polite.
Okay. And in the 2 full days of examination, you felt she was polite and answered all your questions, except in one instance where she furrowed her brow when you were asking about friendships in high school, correct?
That's not correct.
All right, let's go to page 275. So we start on 274 with the, was she polite? You said yes. Was she cooperative? Yes. Did she answer your questions? For the most part, yes. This is, now we're on page 275, lines 4 and 5. And then my question was, did she at any time become combative or unfriendly with you or angry? And your answer was, there was one instance in which she appeared annoyed and the posturing forward a bit, more assertive tone, furrowed brow, when I was questioning something, following up on data that had been inconsistent about friendships in high school. Other than that, she was very polite. Is that your answer at that time?
That was my answer at that time, and it's inconsistent with the question you had just asked me.
And would you agree that appearing for this examination with an expert who had been retained by Mr. Depp more than a year earlier might be a little stressful?
Yes,
Okay. And in fact, not only had you been retained by Mr. Depp, but what had been communicated by Mr. Depp's team was that you had called Amber Heard a liar and a perpetrator of abuse, correct?
first of all, I'd like to clarify that I was not retained by Mr. Depp. I was retained by Mr. Depp's counsel. And what I can say that, yes, any examinee in a forensic context, you would consider that they're probably stressed.
All right, would you agree that all perpetrators of IPV have anger management issues?
Yes,
And a large portion of IPV perpetrators have substance abuse issues?
it's one of many factors that correlates with intimate partner violence, but there are certainly many people who perpetuate intimate partner violence who do not have substance abuse issues.
All right, let's go to 131, line 17.
$131, you said?
Yes, line 12 is what I have here. And I'm talking about, you said, and just to give context, remember I was asking you what percentage of people you treat that are perpetrators, and you'd said 5%. Do you recall that, just for substance?
I see that here.
Okay, and then I said, of the 5% that are IPV perpetrators that you've treated over the last 8 years, how many of these perpetrators have substance abuse issues? And your answer was?
I see that I answered with a figure of speech, a large portion.
Okay, thank you. And it's common for the perpetrator to essentially gaslight the victim, accuse them of being the perpetrator. Would you agree?
Are you in a different area, or are you asking me a separate question?
I'm asking you a question.
Oh.
And it's common.
Sorry, can you please repeat it?
Yes. And it's common for the perpetrator to essentially gaslight the victim, accuse them of being the perpetrator. Would you agree? That's exactly how it was asked in the deposition. So
I understand it is a compound question. I'll sustain the objection.
And it's common for the perpetrator to essentially gaslight. I don't think that's, Your Honor, it's this, I think it's just one question. Let me try it. To gaslight the victim, isn't it?
That's a characteristic of psychological abuse, yes.
Okay, and it's common then for them to accuse them of being the perpetrator, the victim.
That's a characteristic of abuse from women perpetrated against men. It's actually very, very common. About 90% of male victims of IPV have reported that a female partner who abuses them makes threats to report their partner as an abuser. It's less common for men to make that statement to female partners just because there's less potential consequence.
Isn't it true, though, that some form of gaslighting is often present in these personality-based IPV scenarios?
Yes.
Okay. And it's distressing for the victim to be accused, is it not?
Absolutely.
It causes them a lot of fear?
Certainly.
And it causes them a lot of distress?
Absolutely, yes.
And in fact, they feel falsely accused, correct?
Yes.
And they feel paranoid?
Yes.
And they feel frightened?
Yes.
Afraid that everyone's going to believe the perpetrator, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, they're afraid they're going to lose their security, correct?
Can you clarify what you mean by security?
I'll ask the next one. And they're afraid they're going to lose their reputation, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now let's talk about the testing for a moment. You talked about the MMPI-2, but that's not the most recent MMPI, is it?
No, it's the most researched.
Okay. Now, you need to have an elevated, on the MMPI, there was only one section that had elevated scores, correct?
No, that's not correct.
It was the K section, correct?
That's not correct.
Okay. And was there any elevated score over 65 on the MMPI?
I would need to take a look at it. If, you know, I provided a 25-page interpretation outline. If you're able to pull that up, I'd be happy to go over any of the individual scores for you.
Can you recall any clinical scales for the MMPI-2 for Amber Heard that were above 65 as you sit there today?
Again, there are multiple scales on this test, 25 pages worth listed. So if you can pull it up, then I can review and give you a confident answer.
What can you recall as you sit there?
I'm hesitant to do that because I don't want to make an error by ignoring hundreds of scale scores.
And would you agree that you can't make a pathological determination or diagnosis if the scales are not elevated on the MMPI-2?
I would not agree with that.
Okay. Now, one of the answers that Amber gave is that it's hard for her to feel safe, correct?
Are you talking about the MMPI-2?
Yes.
Again, I don't recall. There are 567 items on that. I would need to see her results.
Well, it's a common trauma symptom, isn't it, to not feel safe?
Sure.
And safety concerns are common among women who have been victimized, correct?
Women and men, yes.
Okay, and common especially for sexually victimized people. Would you agree?
Any type of victimization, yes.
Okay, and hard to trust. That's a common after effect of interpersonal violence-related trauma, correct?
Sure.
And memory difficulties. Amber said she felt she had holes. Do you recall that?
I do. And her account was different than typical memory difficulties with trauma.
It is common for individuals who have experienced trauma.
And it's actually not common. No, it's a symptom, but it's the least common.
In fact, a DSM-5 diagnosis for PTSD includes a, quote, inability to remember an important aspect of the traumatic event, end of quote. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. And memory difficulties are a symptom of PTSD, correct?
Certain types of memory difficulties, yes.
Okay. Now, do you recall when Amber says the first incident of abuse took place?
I believe it was, the first incident in which yes. So she stated that it was early on in their relationship.
Okay. Do you recall it?
I don't recall the exact date off the top of my head.
Do you recall it being a tattoo, something related to a tattoo?
I do.
Okay. Now, if someone had been subjected to a 4-year relationship characterized by repeated IPV, they can have symptoms, correct?
Yes.
Intense anxiety,
Yes, certainly.
depressed or irritable states,
Actually, it's not so much states. When you're looking at a real trauma reaction, it's pretty persistent. It's less of these transient states.
intimate problems,
Yes.
relationship difficulties.
Yes.
And these are symptoms you're also attributing to the personality disorder, correct?
Yes, there are some key differences.
Okay. Now let's talk for a moment specifically about a couple of the profiles on the MMPI. This is not an exaggerated profile for her, is it?
No, actually, that was something unique. When she completed objective broadband measures, where the questions, you don't know what the questions are getting at, they seem completely random, she raised scores that indicated that she was trying to minimize any mental issues and appear completely free of pathology. When she took tests that asked questions that were specific to trauma, that's when you'd see these extreme exaggerations.
All right, let's go to page 337. My question on line 7, this is not an exaggerated profile, is it, for her? And your answer under oath at that time was, no, it is not an exaggerated profile. Do you see that?
Yes, we're
That's what
talking
you
about the
testified-
MMPI here.
You
Yes.
testified under oath at that time, correct?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Now, the profile is also not consistent with malingering, correct?
The MMPI-2 profile, it's specific to how she approached this test, and you're correct. For this test, it was a defensive profile, not an exaggerated profile.
So my question on line 10 was, this is not a profile consistent with malingering, correct? And your answer under oath at that time was correct. On this test, it is not consistent with malingering, period, right?
Yes.
That was your full answer. Okay. Now, is it your testimony under oath today that you have not been asked to testify concerning Ms. Hurd's behavior in the context of her relationship with Mr. Depp, including any abuse?
That's correct.
Okay. And you have not made any determinations, including any of opinions that Ms. Hurd abused Mr. Depp or Mr. Depp abused Ms. Hurd, correct?
Correct. That's outside of the scope of psychology.
Okay. And you cannot testify whether Amber Hurd suffered any emotional distress as a result of any of the defamatory comments that she has alleged Mr. Waldman made through Mr. Depp made through Mr. Waldman, correct?
What I can testify is that there was no indication of a decline in psychological functioning showing any injury since she's been with Mr. Depp.
You cannot testify one way or the other on that, correct? Your Honor, may we approach?
Okay.
Dr. Curry,
Yes.
in your report, nowhere in your report did you provide any opinion of whether Ms. Heard suffered emotional distress as a result of the defamatory statements. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
All right, redirect.
Dr. Kerr, you were just asked a question about malingering
Yes.
and made reference to the MMPI-2. Is there another test that you did to make a determination with respect to malingering?
Yes. So I also, well, malingering is a term that most psychologists, we try to be careful of it because it indicates an intent for secondary gain. I prefer feigning, which you had brought up earlier, because it indicates that somebody is intentionally exaggerating, but I don't know necessarily why. So I think that's a more accurate term in general. On the MMPI-2, yes, there was no exaggerated profile. I also gave her the CAPS-5. I don't know if you'll remember, but that is the clinician-administered PTSD scale consistent with the DSM-5. And on that, there were signs of gross exaggeration. I also looked at the test results that were provided by Dr. Hughes, and on an objective test of trauma, there is a scale specific to intentional exaggeration on that test, and Ms. Heard was in the 98th percentile, meaning that she had engaged in extreme levels of exaggeration.
Thank you. You were asked about intimacy problems, relationship difficulties associated with IPV, and you then said that there were some key differences.
Yes.
What are those?
So what you see when we're talking about the personality disorders is there is a very consistent pattern of the aggression, the violence, the irritability. First of all, it's escalated. But second of all, it occurs when there is either, for the borderline component, a threat of abandonment, a perceived slight, feeling like the person is about to leave you, about to walk away to get some space from an argument. It also occurs to a more mild extent, but when there's a loss of attention and a need to manipulate to try to get that attention back. But it's not, when somebody has PTSD, that irritability is sort of at a low, constant level, or it's completely random. For instance, you might have a Vietnam vet who went straight to bars for a period to get into fights with the hope that he would kill somebody and just self-destruct. So it's a very different type of presentation. IPV, it might be more irritability, but that's actually less of a symptom for female IPV victims. Usually what you'll see is somatic symptoms, the depression, a lot of fearfulness and anxiety, but typically more complaints about somatic symptoms.
Okay. You testified that some of the professionals involved in this case had to take their patient at her word. What did you mean by that?
So when you're providing therapy, you're in a very different role than an examiner. When you're the forensic examiner, you're just really looking at data to make a decision. When you're a therapist, you're an advocate for your client's well-being. And in fact, it's considered extremely unethical for a treating provider to ever provide opinion testimony like I'm providing, because it's so well known in our field that you're going to have an automatic bias for your client. It's almost a sense of protection, advocacy, wanting their best, which is why we also know that it's very inappropriate to convey any sort of opinion about whether a crime occurred, whether abuse occurred. We can certainly believe our clients, we can support them in their therapy and take them at their word, but when giving opinions and consultations, we have to be very, very cautious and really only provide the facts. We would state things in terms of, my client did report this, I saw this, here was our treatment plan, here was the diagnosis. It's, we're taught, we're trained to stay away from making any sort of opinions, understanding that most of the time, and most of Ms. Heard's providers were just treating Ms. Heard. They had never so much as done an initial interview with Mr. Depp and gotten his whole life story or his symptoms or his side of any of it. And they're going to be advocating, and the treatment relationship is about helping your client achieve well-being, not making formal psychological or psychiatric opinions.
So you're asked a question about a series of doctors. Dr. Cohen, treating physician?
Yes, he was a psychologist.
Yeah. Dr. Banks, treating physician?
Dr. Banks, yes, treating psychiatrist.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes, treating psychologist.
Every one of them had to take Amber Heard at his word, right?
Yes.
Oh, overruled.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right. Is this witness subject? Yes, sorry. Is this witness subject to recall?
Yeah, for rebuttal.
All right. Since you're subject to recall, Dr. Curry, please do not discuss your testimony with anybody, and please do not watch anything of this trial, okay? All right,
Got
thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
You can stay there for a moment.
Okay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and take our afternoon recess for 15 minutes. Do not do any outside research and don't talk to anybody, okay?
All right, everyone. They are going on break now. So we're going to chat a little bit while they go on their 15-minute break. If you want to get some coffee, we're still going to be here on this main stream
Okay.
until
We'll come back at
the
3:20
end
before
of
comes back
the
out. We'll discuss your exhibits, okay?
court
All right, thank you.
today. So please make sure that you stay with us, and we will be chatting about this. So what do you think of the testimony thus far from Dr. Curry and the cross-examination by the Amber Heard team? Do you feel that the cross-examination was thorough? Do you feel that the cross-examination hit the points that needed to be hit? Also, are you team Johnny or are you team Amber? We're going to put the timestamps in the bottom at the end of this video once court concludes today, that you can go back and hit certain sections of the video if you've missed it for the replay crew. But anyway, like I said, what are your thoughts? Do you feel that Dr. Curry was thorough in her cross? Please put your comments in the chat and let me know. Let me know what your thoughts are. Do you feel like this was really fact-finding? What did you feel about the fact that there were other doctors with personal opinions regarding what transpired in Johnny Depp's and Amber Heard's relationship? Do you think it was ethical for Dr. Curry to be interviewed as a potential witness for Johnny Depp at his home by his attorneys and Johnny Depp? What do you think? What is your assessment of this? You've been watching all this time, and it's been very intriguing and telling. And we do have a comment earlier on the thoughts of one viewer on what's going on. She said the woman is grabbing, referring to Amber Heard's attorney, for straws and can't form a question. Like, she knows Amber is wrong, is actually going to talk about muffins. So do you agree with Hannah? Do you believe that Hannah is giving an accurate portrayal of what was happening in the courtroom with the cross-examination this afternoon? Also, remember that we do have the part one, the morning session, on video that's available from this morning, and you can watch that. I'm going to put the link to the video in the chat So you can, this is part 1 from this morning trial. You want to go back and watch that also. Also, I want to share with you, give you the opportunity to go watch the Busted video where Melania Cosmetics pretty much debunked the theory that Amber Heard used their product for covering up bruises that she stated that Johnny Depp allegedly caused to her face. Melania Cosmetics said that the product was not released to the public until December of 2017, and that was a year and a half, over a year after their divorce when they released that particular product. And the attorneys for Amber Heard in her opening statement had the compact in her hand and said, this is the product that Amber Heard used, and said that that Amber Heard would testify that this is the product she used. So this is what she put in, and that's what she showed to the jury in her opening statement. So I'm going to put the video there. It's only a 3-minute video if you want to check it out while they're on break. It's in the chat. The link to the video is in the chat. Make sure you check that out and watch that also. We wonder if this is going to come up. It's going to be very difficult for Amber Heard not to testify regarding the Melania product because it was introduced in the opening statement. Now, many people have said that Amber, the attorneys use props, but one thing also is with props is that they do not specify. They'll say something like ABC used a product similar to this product here. But the attorney for Amber Heard said this, holding it in her hand and holding it up to the jury, the judge, and the entire courtroom, this is the product that Amber Heard carried in her purse for over 2 years to cover up bruises that Johnny Depp inflicted upon her, and Amber Heard would testify to this. She said that that was the testimony. That would be the testimony. So do you feel that Amber Heard and her team will be able to get past that? Because that is a definite debunk. Like I said, I encourage you to watch that short-term video, All right. Hillary says that she is Team Johnny for sure. She thinks all the cross-examination questions were great and in-depth, but I definitely noticed Amber's lawyer tried to twist a lot of Dr. Curry's finding and personal information. All righty. Do you all agree with Hillary? I find that, one thing, this is a civil case and not a criminal case. So they're going to, on both sides, they're going to present things that's going to favor their client. And she really did try to have a gotcha moment with Dr. Curry, but it seemed to fall short of the gotcha moment because Dr. Curry seems like she is very well versed in testifying in court. She was able to articulate things that she said. She was able to articulate that this was not what she said. She was able to clarify what was done and what was not done. Now, when they come back off of break, I'm positive, pretty sure that Johnny Depp's team is going to redirect. Well, they started redirecting. I mean, they're going to redirect their the cross examination. So it should be interesting how Johnny Depp team do that. Yes. Yes, Hillary. She says that she's glad that she got a psychological evaluation and a diagnostic. And that is very interesting to me, is that she actually went through a psychological exam for the case. I wonder if Johnny Depp went through a psychological exam for her cross complaint. I'm sitting on the edge of my seats. I hope you all are sitting on the edge of your seats too. I'm glad that there's a psychological evaluation, that there's an expert on the stand, and I'm sure that we're going to see more experts come as we go through this trial. They have estimated that this trial will be 6 weeks, and this is day 9. So we got a long way to go. And so what we've decided here at Save News, because we've received so many requests, that every day we're going to have the trial on. So you can join us tomorrow. Make sure you subscribe, like, and follow. So when we put up this, then you'll be able to do that. Yes, Hillary, it only allows 200 characters at a time. Yes, it only allows 200 characters. Yes, and she states that Johnny is at least in front of the things he participated in and admits to what he should not have done and acknowledges it was the wrong way to react. Now, that is true. Now, one thing that I noticed during the cross-examination of Johnny Depp during this trial was they kept bringing up his drug use and, his alcohol use. Well, even when he was testifying before Cross got to him, Johnny Depp was very clear that he had problems with drug use and alcohol. He was very transparent in his problems that he's had throughout the course of his life and the challenges that he has had. My question is, will Amber be as transparent when she gets on the stand? We're positive that Amber will testify in this trial. We're not sure whether Johnny Depp's team will call her or she will wait until her side of the case, her case is pretty much up. But yes. So you had so much to write. Okay, I understand. I know. Now look, it says 200 characters. That's all we're going to get. But I'm sure that there was a lot to write because, there's a lot that's gone on in this case. It is so inviting to see people, involved in this. It is good to watch the actual trial. Sometimes people have commentary on things, but they haven't watched the entire trial. But one thing, like I stated to all of you all, when the trial is on, I'm making any commentary. I want you all to sit back, listen to the trial, hear it for yourself. And then, when they go to break, then I'll do a little bit of commentary. And then at the end of testimony for the day, I'll do a little bit of commentary, but not much. I want you all to have time to listen and absorb. And we also have the closed caption on just in case you miss something, because sometimes they're talking fast. Sometimes the mics are turned down and you can't really hear exactly what they're saying from time to time. All right, correct. They both have used, including each other, with each other. Yes, they have. You're 99% certain that she will continue to downplay any wrongdoings by her. Well, we're going to see. We're going to see what's going to happen. And do you feel that Dr. Curry's assessment of Amber Heard is correct? Do you feel that I feel that one thing that is great about this trial is that it brings to light domestic violence against men, because sometimes when we hear domestic violence, we only think about women being the victims of domestic violence, and a lot of times men do not speak up. I think that Johnny Depp, regardless of whether he wins or loses, I think he testified that regardless of the outcome of the case, that he wanted to get his story, his side of what happened out. And I think that he's accomplished this during the trial. I know this trial is costing a whole lot of money, a whole lot of money. So at least, he had to pay to get his side out. But he also testified that he did not feel that an article would be suffice of him getting his side of what happened in his life, in his relationship, according to his recollection, out, because it would be minimized. And that's why he went the route of suing for defamation. Now, we know that this testimony here has been very triggering for a lot of people, and it's been very sensitive. But he is suing for defamation on an article, an op-ed that she wrote, and she is countersuing because, for $100 million, based on the fact that she was called a liar by Johnny Depp's team. So Johnny Depp is suing for $50 million, and she is countersuing for $100 million. Now, it could be Johnny Depp win and Amber loses, or Amber could win and Johnny loses, or they both could lose. It could be both of them. Not this. The jury could say, "Well, look, but y'all just had issues, and we're not going to award anyone a victory in this case." Yes, it does bring to light domestic violence against men, and men can be victims. And a lot of times, just as Dr. Curry testified, the majority of the time, if the victim is a male, then the female will state that she is the victim. And also, as you recall, I don't know whether you watched yesterday, but yesterday at the end of Johnny Depp's testimony, they played the recording where Amber Heard herself said, "Johnny Depp, you are a victim of, as a man, you're a victim of domestic violence too. And what jury will ever believe you?" So I don't know whether you all caught that at the end of his testimony yesterday, but I'm going to go back and put that up, because that is very telling. And that's why a lot of men do not come forward regarding the domestic violence, because there's shame attached to it. There's embarrassment, the peers, and also the fact that a lot of men are not believed if they state that they are the victims of domestic violence. So what we at Save News going to do, once this trial is over, we're going to do a special with an expert regarding domestic violence and men, because I think it's very timely. Now, again, like I stated, this trial is estimated to last 6 weeks, and we're on day 9. And it's also estimated it could take up to 2 weeks for the jury in their deliberation, once they start deliberating, to come back with the verdict or verdicts. So we are, in it for the long haul. We'll be live every day, not unless something strange happens, but we will be live with the coverage. Now, generally, the court is very much on time, and she say 15 minutes. It's normally 15 minutes. So evidently there's something going on in the background of this case that the court has not started, because it's almost been 20 minutes. And that is not normal for the court to be, over 15 minutes. Okay, so here we go. We're back. And so I'm going to bring back in the thing. They are at the bench conferring, and it's going to come up on the screen in a minute. So evidently something is going on, y'all. I wonder what it was. Oh, wow. This is going to be good. What in the world was going on? Why are they at the bench? Yes. And you know that the audio is cut from the courtroom when they are approaching the bench, and they only put it back up when they are doing testimony. So there's something really going on. I wonder what is going on now. It looks like all the lawyers or a bunch of them are up there conferring at the bench. What is going on, everybody? Woo, I would love to be a fly on the wall. I know you all would love to be a fly on the wall too. Well, a fly on the desk of the judge, let's say that. I wonder what's happening. It seems like there's a lot going on here, because they were late coming back. And like I said, they're not going to turn back on the audio until they come back down from conferring at the bench. So this is very interesting. And it is very telling, because like I said, now we're talking about, 6 or 7 minutes past the break, that normal break that they would have. So we don't know, during the whole break they could have been conferring. Now we see the papers that the attorneys is holding up. So there was an objection or something to what could be admitted into court, into evidence. So we want to know exactly what that is. We're not going to know what they're arguing about, because like I said, they cut the audio. But we know that the audio, once the testimony comes in, it will they will turn back on the audio. Oh, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, everybody. I appreciate it. But yeah, I'm gonna put this up here for people that don't know that they cut the audio. You will see me put several things up on screen, because I want to keep you informed. But yes, they are at that bench, and it is, yes, exactly, Hillary. It looks like someone has an issue with some evidence or documentation that was submitted. Amber Lawyers has all her documents, but Johnny's lawyers are empty-handed and all up there, primarily speaking. True. Now, I thank you for pointing that out, Hillary, that Johnny's attorneys have nothing in their hands. So the strange thing is that Amber's attorney ended their cross prior to break. So why is it that Amber's attorney have documentation? Ooh, this is interesting. Oh, wow. Would love to be a fly on the wall, baby. Yes. The courtroom is filled, and most of Johnny's attorneys are up there doing, and Amber's attorneys. The lead attorney for Johnny, as you see. And one thing, yes, Janet, Amber's defense attorney is throwing a fit. Is anyone surprised? No. One thing that we have found out during the course of this trial, especially if you have been watching from the beginning, Johnny's attorneys generally win the objections and when they go up to the bench. Like I stated, whatever this is very serious. Now, like I said, I will be doing timestamps on the video. They went to break at 1 hour 11 minutes and 30 seconds in. So they should have been back at 1:16. Well, now it is 1:25. Now they came back, but they've been arguing up there at the bench that we can see at least almost 10 minutes. So we don't even know if they even went to break. This is a very deep, deep objection. And so we want to see, Janet, I'm with you. They're having a problem here at this Thank you so much, Janet. I'm glad thank you. Please like, subscribe. And I appreciate you so much. And thank you. I appreciate how you love the way we do things. Yes, we try to, when the testimony is going on, we do not do any commentary because, it's like me when I go to the movies. I don't want people in the audience talking. I want to see it for myself. So we don't do commentary while the testimony is going. But once testimony, is finished or they're at the bench or, we'll do commentary. We'll do commentary on break. And so we did commentary on this break. But I'm going to tell you, honey, they are definitely in it. They are in it. Like I said, we have gone now over 16 minutes. Like I said, they took a break at over 20 minutes, 25 minutes, because they took the break at the live went on for 1 hour, 11 minutes and 30 seconds. We're at 1 hour, 37 minutes and 10 seconds, as I said that. So we are 16 minutes over time. So, baby, they are definitely, okay, they're getting ready to come back. Now, my stream is just like a couple of seconds. Oh, no, they still up at the bench. They went back to get something. Oh, wow. Oh, Lord, you all definitely know that this is serious. Now, as you can see, that Johnny's team is going back. You'll see that in a second. But Amber's team is still up at the bench arguing with the judge, or discussing. I won't say arguing because I don't know myself. Thank you, Hillary. Thank you. Yes. And thank you so much. We love you too. Thank you. Yes, I do stay quiet. I do watch some of the other channels. I have been, but it bothers me when I'm trying to watch something and there's a bunch of commentary on it. I like to sit back and watch. Okay, everybody, they getting ready to come back. So I'm going to shut up and we all going to watch again. Okay. All righty. They are back in session.
We're ready for the jury then?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, thank you. Your next witness?
We call Officer Melissa Sines by deposition designation.
All right. Like
And just so the jury is aware, for the first hour or so, what you'll hear is questioning by Ms. Hurd's counsel. It will then shift to questioning by Mr. Depp's counsel.
All right, thank you.
Please state your name and your business address. Yes, Officer Melissa Sines, 1546 West Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, Los Angeles, California.
And what is your occupation?
I am a police officer.
Okay. And how long have you been a police officer?
Going on 12 years.
What year did you begin as a police officer?
2009.
And was that with the LAPD?
Yes, it was.
Did you have any law enforcement experience prior to coming to the LAPD in July of 2009?
No, I did not.
As of May 21, 2016, what was your rank?
Can you repeat the date?
May 21st, 2016.
I was a training officer.
And was that a P3?
Correct.
And as a training officer, were you considered a field training officer?
Correct.
And for how long a period of time had you been a training officer as of May 21, 2016?
Approximately, I believe, 4 months.
And who was the first officer you trained once you became a training officer at the LAPD?
I don't recall.
When did you start training Officer Haddon?
I don't recall the exact month.
Do you have an approximate?
If the incident was in May, then it's going to be within 2 months of May, before or after.
So are you suggesting that you may not have started training Officer Haddon until 2 months after the May 21, 2016 incident, so he wasn't there?
No, I'm not.
Was it 2 months or less from the time you started training Officer Haddon before the May 21, 2016 incident?
Yes, so I have a probationer for 2 months. So May could have been the second month I had him or the first month I had him.
But you don't recall, as you sit here today, how long you had been training Officer Haddon as of the May 21st, 2016 incident?
Correct.
What does Central Division include?
It encompassed downtown Los Angeles.
In May of 2016, what shift were you on?
I was working nights.
And what would the night shift entail? What was the time from when to when?
It is approximately 6:45 p.m. to 6:45 a.m.
And how many days a week would you work the shift?
Usually 3 days a week.
Typically, what was the range of the number of units that were working on your shift in May 2016 in Central Division?
I don't recall.
I mean, are we talking less than 5, more than 10, more than 25?
There would be at least 5 units. How high over that, I wouldn't know that. Every night is different. The city pulls from different divisions if there's special events going on. So it's constantly changing.
Okay. But it's usually at least 5 and maybe somewhere between 5 and 10 if there's not a special event. Would that be a fair estimate?
Correct.
What was the process for checking out equipment in May 2016 after roll call?
We would walk to the window and give them our name and serial number, and they would present us with equipment for the shift.
And what equipment were you given in May 2016 after roll call?
I don't recall.
You don't recall any of the equipment you checked out in May of 2016 after roll call?
I don't remember that specific day that I checked out equipment. I can tell you what I typically check out, if that's what you'd like.
All right, let's start there.
I usually check out a police vehicle, a taser, a less lethal beanbag shotgun, and a regular shotgun.
Anything else?
No, nothing else.
Do you check out body-worn video equipment?
Yes, if you were trained in body-worn video, then yes, you would check that out.
All right. Were you trained in body-worn video equipment?
I was not.
Have you ever been assigned body-worn video equipment?
Yes, I have.
When?
I don't remember the specific date.
What is your best estimate?
If I had to guess, it would probably be June of 2016.
Why do you think it was June of 2016 that you first were assigned body-worn video equipment?
Because that's the time frame that I remember having to use it. It was new to me. I never used body-worn before.
When did the LAPD start issuing body-worn equipment for Central Division?
I don't know that date.
When approximately?
I don't know. I couldn't give you a date.
Can you name any other officer that did not have body-worn equipment that was on your shift at any time between November 2015 and June 2016, other than you?
I cannot.
Have you had more than one body-worn video equipment?
Body-worn camera, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
I have had two. One in Central Division, and now a new one at Southwest Division where I currently am. The camera stays at their respective divisions.
While you were at Central Division, did you ever get assigned more than one body-worn video camera?
Not to my knowledge.
So to the best of your knowledge, you had the same body-worn video camera throughout the time that you were at Central Division, is that correct?
Correct.
Do you have a recollection of at any time while you were at Central Division, your body-worn video camera not working so you couldn't turn it on during an incident?
I do not recall that.
What tools were available to you in May of 2016 for investigating calls, answering and investigating calls?
Can you specify what you mean by tools?
Well, did you have a notebook, for example?
Yes, we carry field officers' notebooks.
Okay. And did you have your own field officer notebook?
Yes.
Can you describe what your field officer notebook looked like in May of 2016?
It's a small, just paper pad that we keep in our pockets to write on.
And do you carry a pencil or a pen with it so that you can take them out during a call and take notes?
I do.
What do you do with your notebooks once you have filled them?
You can turn them into the kit room and they can store them.
Is that what you have done?
I have my same officer's field officer's notebook in my locker.
Since you started?
No, I've had several different ones, but I usually keep them in my locker.
So for the field officer's notebook that you had in May of 2016, that would be in your locker?
It should be, yes.
How many field officer notebooks have you filled since you've been a police officer?
Not many, probably less than 5.
And do you recall roughly how many pages are in each field officer notebook?
No, I don't recall.
Did you have access to DART?
I don't recall what hours they worked at Central Division.
And what did DART stand for?
I don't know the specific acronym, but I know it's the domestic violence card.
Did you also have access to types of reports, incident reports, various forms, diagrams, things of that nature in case you needed them?
Yes, I did.
And where were those kept while you were on a shift? I'm talking about May 2016.
I usually keep extra spare reports in my bag, and I also keep them in my vest.
So when you answered calls in May of 2016, you had reports material in your vest as you answered calls? Is that correct?
Yes.
It's Deposition Exhibit number 14. It's a multiple page document. I'm just asking her if she recognizes this document.
Yes, I do.
Okay. When is the last time you reviewed this document?
About a week ago.
All right. And what were the circumstances under which you reviewed this document a week ago?
For this testimony.
Now, I asked you some questions about the body-worn video. Are you aware of any other officer being assigned your body-worn video under your serial number?
I'm not aware.
Is there any chance that you could be mistaken about when you were assigned body-worn video?
No, there's not.
And why do you say that?
Because everything is recorded and documented on evidence.com under my serial number. So if a supervisor wanted to enter the database under my serial number, they could watch my videos and see the specific date and time my videos started to record and when the date of my last video was to this date.
All right. And did you go back and look to see what date you started?
I did.
What was the date that you were assigned body-worn video equipment in Central Division?
So the first day that I took out body-worn video was June 16th of 2016.
I'm going to show you this second page of what has been marked as Deposition Exhibit number 1. It has you summoned to attend and give testimony at a deposition and also to produce certain documents. Do you recall this being issued?
Yes, I do.
And here we go. The documents to be produced. The first of those was all video footage recorded by you relating to any incident at 849 South Broadway, Los Angeles, California, 90014 on May 21, 2016, including all video footage relating to incident number, and it has the number on May 21, 2016. Did you conduct any type of search or any kind of effort to see if you had any video footage on May 21, 2016 relating to this incident?
The answer is no.
I'm going to ask you, did anyone at the LAPD at any point, supervisors, watch commanders, anyone connected to the LAPD, ever ask you whether you had any video footage from the incident of May 21, 2016?
No.
I'm going to ask you to take a look at number 2 here. It says all documents and/or communications, including without limitation any notes, memoranda, reports, filings, and/or summaries relating to any incident at 849 South Broadway, Los Angeles, California 90014 on May 21, 2016. Are you aware of any documents or communications that would fit this description?
No.
Now, Officer Sines, you've had training on domestic violence, correct?
Correct.
Could you tell me what that consists of?
We received training in the police academy.
Anywhere else? Did you have any other type of domestic violence training other than when you were in the police academy?
Other than my experience in the field dealing with domestic violence, no, not that I can recall.
And as of May of 2016, would you agree that you had answered over 100 domestic violence calls?
I go to a lot of domestic violence calls every day.
Okay. And you consider yourself to be a specialist in domestic violence, is that accurate?
I don't understand the title specialist. I don't consider myself a specialist.
In May of 2016, what was the police officer supposed to do when the victim of a domestic violence would not respond to questions or cooperate with pursuing charges after a call was placed and the police officers had arrived?
If an individual is uncooperative, we are to check the location to make sure that the suspect is in hiding for the safety of the potential victim, and offer a business card if they decide to speak to us later.
In May of 2016, was it your understanding that if you saw evidence of injury or property damage in disarray, that you were to file a report even if the victim was not cooperating?
Correct.
I'm going to show you what is marked as exhibit number 8, and this is something that was dated November 24, 2018. It's to all department personnel from the Chief of Police, Domestic Violence Supplemental Report Form. And it starts out with the Domestic Violence Supplement Report Form, and it has the number of it, has been revised to provide a more concise picture of the history and needs of the victim for the purpose of investigating the crime of domestic violence. Was this a document that you recall receiving at some point?
Yes.
Okay. And do you understand, do you have any understanding of why this was supplemented in November 24, 2014?
I do not.
I'm going to ask you, officer, to take a look at what has been marked as exhibit number 9, and it's called Los Angeles Police Department Domestic Violence Supplemental Report. Do you recognize this document?
Yes.
Okay. And what is your understanding of what this document is?
It's a supplemental document that we add to a police report for domestic violence.
All right. And is this one of the reports that you would carry in your vest when you answered calls?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to take a look, if you can, at the very left-hand column, where it has a number of different categories here, and it has victim shaking, unresponsive, crying, scared, angry, fearful, of why these are included on this supplemental domestic violence report.
So identify somebody's emotional state during an investigation?
And this is specifically with respect to domestic violence, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then if you can turn over to the crime scene section on the right-hand side, you'll notice that there are some categories that include location vandalized / ransacked, personal property damage, furniture disarray, broken. What is your understanding of why those categories are included in there for making notations for domestic violence supplemental report?
So identify the crime scene at the time of the incident.
Okay. And was it your understanding that these items that they have on here may be significant in assisting in determining whether there was in fact domestic violence and improving the case.
Correct.
And I direct your attention specifically to the evidence section. And it indicates witnesses present during domestic violence, statements taken, evidence collected, photos taken on there. What is your understanding of the significance of this collecting this information?
It's significant to tell a story about what happened at the domestic violence incident.
Okay. And then if we can scroll down a little bit further to additional questions, there's a series of those, including, has suspect threatened to kill you? Do they possess firearms? Have they ever attempted to smother, strangle, or suffocate you? And things of that nature. What is your understanding of why you're supposed to ask those questions?
Give you a background on the relationship and an idea of what the victim and the suspect have been through.
Okay, thank you. Just let me ask you the question, Officer Science. You did not fill out that supplemental report when you responded on May 21, 2016 to the Broadway call, correct, with Amber Heard?
Correct, it did not meet criteria.
The question I asked was, did you fill out one of those forms?
No, I did not. I did not meet criteria.
Officer Science, I'm going to ask you to take a look at what has been marked as exhibit number 10, and if I can direct your attention to the top, it says domestic violence standards of review, and it has field notebook divider, domestic violence laws, LAPD form number 18.30.02. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
It has case preparation. It says, note the complainant's emotional and physical condition. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And then ensure all evidence is gathered and preserved, e.g. bloodied clothing, damaged phones, property. You see that?
Yes, I do.
And it also says ensure photographs are taken of injuries or lack of injury to complainant and accused, and then suggest both a day or two after. What is your understanding of the reasons for collecting this evidence?
Because these are fruits of a crime.
I'm sorry, I didn't...
Because these are fruits of a crime. If there's a crime, this is important to prove that a crime was committed.
And what do you mean by fruits of a crime?
If we're talking domestic violence, the location would be evidence. So if there's, a house is ransacked, then that should be noted in the report. That would be considered evidence.
All right, and then we're going to go to the second page here, and it has ensure photographs are taken of scene and damaged property, e.g. broken furniture, holes in wall, damaged phones, phone card, evidence of alcohol consumption, general disarray. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And what is your understanding of why that would be important?
Same thing, proof of a crime.
Okay. And then it also says canvass location and interview all witnesses, including children, fresh complaint witnesses, neighbors, and local law enforcement. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And what would be the reason for canvassing the location and interviewing all witnesses?
That would be further evidence.
All right. And what is your understanding of what fresh complaint means?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay. And then if we go down a little bit further, it also has complainant questions, and it has questions such as length and nature of relationship, but also prior incidents of domestic violence reported and unreported, and what form of violence or abuse has taken. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And what is your understanding of why that would be important?
Because it gives us an idea and background of the relationship.
Okay. And then we go to the next page, And we have a little bit more here. We have the, not too far. And that says how long the abuse has been occurring, any logs or diaries, is there a pattern of alcohol or substance abuse? What is your understanding of why those would be relevant?
Again, because it gives us background on what we're dealing with, what type of relationship this is.
And may help with the proof of the crime?
Correct.
Okay. And then we have identify the person who first saw the complainant after the incident. And it says in parentheses, fresh complaint witness. So I'm kind of guessing that must be the definition. But why would it be important to interview or identify the person who first saw the complainant after the incident?
They probably have the best recollection.
Okay. And also has identify the person with whom the complainant first spoke about the incident, fresh complaint witness. What is your understanding of why that would be important?
Same thing, the best recollection.
Okay. And then we have what have neighbors seen or heard. Why would that be important?
Because it would prove to us that there was an incident if there was other people with the same story as the victim.
Okay. And then we also have, did witness observe how physical injury occurred? Why would that be important?
Because that would tell us that there was a crime, that somebody got injured.
Okay. And then we have statements by the complainant and or accused after the incident. Why would that be important?
Because we're getting our story from the complainant, so what they say is everything with the crime.
All right, let's look at 12 for a moment. This is exhibit number 12. It's the Office of the Chief of Police, April 9, 2002. And it's a domestic violence victims memo. And it says, purpose, the department is legislatively mandated to provide specific information to victims of domestic violence crimes. And then they go in to describe that. What is your understanding of, well, let me go a little bit further because I'm going to try to move through this a little bit quicker. So it says, to mitigate this issue, the department has begun to use the Victim Information Notification Every Day, VINE, pamphlet to accomplish not only the domestic violence information requirements under Section 13701 of the California Penal Code, but also to provide information regarding the VINE program. Did you have a copy of that pamphlet? Was that something that was given to you?
Yes.
Okay. And was that something that you typically provided then, as it says you should, to victims of domestic violence?
Yes.
What is your understanding of why you were to provide the pamphlet to the victim? You understand the question?
Yes, because it gives resources to the victims, domestic violent resources, like shelters and phone numbers to provide help.
I'm going to show you what has been marked as exhibit number 11. Do you recognize this document?
Yes, I do. This is the VINE.
Okay, when you say VINE, is this the pamphlet that was being referred to? Okay. And it's your understanding that you were supposed to be giving that pamphlet to victims of domestic violence on calls, is that correct?
Correct.
Did you provide a copy of this pamphlet to Amber Heard?
I did not identify her as a victim of domestic violence.
Is that the sole reason why you did not give that to Amber Heard?
Yes, we want to give them to victims of domestic violence.
I'm going to ask you to take a look.
At this point, Your Honor, Ms. Heard's counsel is asking to move into evidence and publish to the jury Defendant's Exhibit 730, and Mr. Depp has no objection.
All right, 7:30 in evidence and can be published.
And then
Right.
we can
Okay.
keep going.
First page of exhibit number 3. It's an incident recall from specifically May 21st, 2016. Do you recognize this document?
Yes, I do.
And please explain to me what it is.
It's a summary of our radio call.
All right, and how is this recorded?
By dispatch.
And how is it communicated to you?
A computer in our car.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you to take a look at the very beginning of this. It starts out, it obviously has an incident number. Is this your understanding of the incident recall for the report to 849 South Broadway involving Amber Heard?
Yes.
It starts out with 5/21/16 at 20:30:58, which is 8:30:58 or almost 8:31, and it says incident initiated by such and such. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And the next thing that's communicated is Penthouse 3, PR received call from victim's friend Amber, assaulted by boyfriend. PR refused to give further. You see that?
Yes, I do.
Now, when you were out on the road, did you see that right away, or did you have to look this up later when it was you that was going to respond?
We review the calls as we're driving to the call.
Okay. Then we have at 5/21/2037, which is 8:37, a duplicate call. Do you see that?
I do.
All right, let's go down to 5/21/16. Officer Science, can you go where I just highlighted here? And it's 20:57, which would be what time?
8:57.
All right, and it has STAT:AS. What does that mean?
There you go.
So would that be when you and Officer Haddon arrived at 849 South Broadway?
Correct.
And then it has, the next entry is 5/21/2016. It has 21/22/57. So that would be 9/22.
Correct.
Okay. And it says, go ahead. I'll have you read this. What does it say after that?
Met with Vic, Chuck Lope, verified husband left Lope, Vic advised verbal.
Okay, go ahead and go into the next page or next line. Go ahead.
Dispute and refuse to give any further info, issued business card.
Who wrote those two lines?
I don't recall.
And what did that mean to you, those two lines that you just read?
It's a disposition of what happened at the call.
Okay, can you tell me what that means? I mean, just tell me in real person's words what those words are.
Yeah, that we met with the victim, we checked the location, the husband wasn't there, and that the victim advised us that she just had an argument and that she wasn't going to give us any further information. And because we didn't identify a crime, we issued her a business card letting her know that she could reach out to us later if she changed her mind and wanted to cooperate.
Okay, and at what point did you close this incident?
Whatever it says on the screen, let's see, 9/22/57.
Okay, and what did incident closed mean?
That we cleared from the location. We were complete. Done.
Okay. Now, if we could go to page Bates stamp number 12. And do you recognize this document?
I do. It's a summary of all of our calls from that day.
All right, and I believe you testified earlier that you reviewed this document in preparation for this deposition, is that correct?
Yes, I did. Correct.
Okay, and if we can go down to right here, that's 922, correct, at the end of that?
Correct.
All right, and it says 242D domestic violence. What is that?
It's a code for domestic violence.
And what does the 242D mean?
That's battery.
Officer Science, when we broke before the lunch break, I had just asked you about whether you had believed that you were at the penthouse on May 21st, 2016 for 30 to 60 minutes. Do you recall me asking that?
Yes, I do.
And do you recall testifying that that's what you thought was the time that you and Officer Haddon spent at the penthouse on May 21st, 2016?
Yes, I recall.
Okay. And in fact, it was significantly less, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And in fact, it was, you entered from the elevator at 9:04 p.m. and went back into the elevator at 9:19 for a total of 15 total minutes, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And we've seen the video clips of you getting on the elevator and getting off, and that's where those timestamps come from. Now, once you got off the elevator at 9:04 p.m., the first thing you did was listen for some noise, correct?
Correct.
All right. And then you went around and checked out the outdoor courtyard to see if anyone was outside. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
And you saw that there was a woman in the gym who was not related to the incident. Do you recall that?
Correct.
How did you know the woman was not related to the incident?
Because she seemed unfazed. She was just working out.
Did you speak with her?
No, I didn't.
Do you recall what she looked like?
I don't.
Now, did you take any notes during the entire 15 minutes from when you got off the elevator till when you got back on the elevator from the penthouse?
I did not.
Did Officer Haddon, to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay. Did you take pictures or record anything?
I did not.
So after you saw the woman in the gym and looked at the perimeter, you went back to the hallway and you met with what you called a white male who was generic. Do you recall using that term?
They asked me to describe him, yes.
And you said generic, correct? And what do you mean by generic?
He didn't have any identifying, I don't know, nothing that I could remember. I just remember a male white, nothing out of the ordinary.
What color was his hair?
I don't even remember now.
Did he have facial hair, a beard, or a mustache?
I don't remember.
Do you recall how tall he was, roughly?
I don't remember anything about him.
Did you ask him his name?
I don't recall.
Okay. Now, the generic white male talked with you. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
And when you first saw Amber Heard, she was crying, red-eyed, and was not making eye contact with you, correct?
Correct.
And you asked her a few questions, and it was quite clear that she did not want to speak to the police. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, Amber Heard was visibly upset, so she would look down. Sometimes she would look up at you when she spoke, but was back and forth, correct?
Correct.
What was Amber Heard wearing that night?
I don't recall.
What hairstyle did Amber Heard have that night?
I don't recall.
Now, when was the first time you were asked to provide details of the events of May 21, 2016?
I don't recall.
Do you recall providing your testimony at a deposition in July of 2016?
Correct.
is that the first time you were asked to provide any details of what your recollection was of the events of May 21, 2016?
Correct.
Okay. And that was roughly 2 months later, is that correct?
Correct.
And how many shifts had you worked in that 2-month period?
I'm not aware. I don't know.
How many calls had you answered in those 2 months?
I don't know that number.
How many of those calls were domestic violence calls in those 2 months?
I don't know that number.
And if you saw any signs of injury on Amber Heard, or even just damage to property, would you have been duty bound to make a report?
Correct.
Now, your recollection is that there was no damage to the flat. You searched the entire flat and there was no damage, broken glass, or anything out of the ordinary. Would you agree?
Correct.
Did you see anything, did you observe anything out of the ordinary during this particular call that you answered at the penthouse on May 21, 2016?
I did not.
When you left that call, when you got back into that elevator, do you recall what you were thinking?
I remember being impressed by the penthouse, how big and beautiful it was, yes.
But anything else?
No, nothing.
And just so we can stay on that for a minute, you had not heard of Amber Heard at the time of this report, right, on May 21st, 2016?
Correct.
But you did know that Johnny Depp was an actor, correct?
Correct.
And you didn't know that that was Johnny Depp's penthouse when you reported there, correct?
Correct.
But you, as you just said, were impressed with the penthouse. Would it be fair to say you thought probably somebody with some wealth lived there?
Correct.
Can you bring up plaintiff's exhibit number 23? Officer Science, do you recognize this elevator at all?
Yes, I do.
What do you recall?
That's the elevator from the location.
Okay. Alex, I'm going to ask you to go to 211940. And as you're moving that, Officer Science, I'm going to ask you to take a look at this and see if you can tell me what you are saying to Officer Haddon in this video clip. That's you, is that correct?
Correct.
And Officer Haddon, do you recognize? Officer Science, can you tell what you were saying to Officer Haddon?
I cannot.
Does it look like you might have said at the beginning that was crazy?
I can't tell what I was saying.
Would you agree, though, that you were quite animated in your discussion with Officer Haddon?
No, I wouldn't agree.
How would you describe your demeanor?
Comfortably talking to my partner.
All right, I'm going to ask you to take a look at plaintiff's exhibit number 17. And while Alex is bringing that up, so your best recollection is that you saw no injuries on Amber Heard, correct?
Correct.
And your best recollection is you saw no property damage, nothing in disarray, nothing out of the ordinary, correct?
Correct.
And if you had seen either of those, you would have had to file a report, correct?
Correct.
Officer Science, let me ask you this question. So we've established that you got off the elevator on the penthouse level at 9:04 p.m. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
Do you recognize the person here?
Yes, I do. Amber Heard.
Okay. And do you see any signs of injury on Amber Heard's face in this picture?
I do not.
Is it your testimony that you do not perceive this cheek to be reflecting an injury on Amber Heard?
Correct, no injury.
I'm going to ask you to take a look at this section here above the eyelid, and now I think with the, I'm going to ask you to take a look at that eyelid. Is it your perception that that eyelid does not reflect an injury? I'm sorry, what was your answer? Officer Stein?
Correct, no injury.
Okay, and then up above on the forehead level where the redness is and it looks like there's a couple of bumps, is it your perception that does not reflect an injury?
Correct.
Officer Stein, I'm going to ask you to look at what has been marked as deposition exhibit number 18, close to the time that you alighted from the elevator, correct?
Correct.
Please describe for me what you see in this photograph.
I see a striped carpet with discoloration on the right-hand side of the photo, and what I perceive as, I don't know if that's a reflection, some sort of mark.
Now, you believed and testified, in fact, that you considered the hallways to be very well lit that night, correct?
Correct.
Did you see this, these stains?
No, not that I recall.
All right. Would you agree that those are reddish stains on the right side?
Correct.
What does it look like from your experience?
Like a stain, like from a liquid.
Red wine, possibly?
It could be, yes.
Okay. But you don't recall seeing that in the hallway after you got off the elevator?
I do not.
And you did not investigate this or take any pictures or record anything about it, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now let's go to number 19. Do you recognize what is depicted in exhibit number 19?
Yes, it's our business card.
And it has 1A1 on the front of it. What is that?
That's our unit designation.
And then it has Haddon and a badge number. Is that his badge number?
That is his serial number.
Okay, serial number, thank you. And it has your name, and is that your serial number?
Correct.
Who wrote this on the card?
I don't recall.
Would it have been either you or Officer Haddon?
Correct.
Do you recognize your handwriting?
I can't tell from this.
Now, I think you indicated when you were looking at the incident recall and the CAD summary that a business card had been left. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
And why did you leave a business card?
I advised Amber Heard that she could contact us at any time if she changed her mind and decided that she wanted to speak to us and cooperate.
All right, let's go to number 20. Do you recognize this? What's depicted in this picture?
Yes, I do. It's the back of the business card.
All right. And it says 5/21/2016, and the time is 9:16 p.m. Is that the time that it was written?
Correct.
Okay. And do you recognize the handwriting on this side?
It looks like my handwriting.
Okay. Now it says radio call of dispute. Do you see that?
I do.
Why didn't you put verbal dispute?
It didn't. Verbal dispute, it's the same thing to me.
And you have refused report on here, correct?
Correct.
Could you just read this next part that you wrote on here?
Sure. Advice can call at later time if changes mind, because she was uncooperative and didn't want to speak to us.
Okay. Now, why did you say if changes mind?
Because I was giving her the opportunity to have a resource if she changed her mind.
But if Amber Heard had no injuries and there was no evidence of any type of physical property issues, disarray, breakage, etc., then why would it matter if she changed her mind?
It's a courtesy that I I choose to give people when I go to calls.
Now, if Amber Heard had called you later, you had already closed this out and had not written a report and had taken no notes, correct?
Correct.
But if I'm understanding your earlier testimony, that if you saw evidence of injury, or if you saw injury of evidence of property damage, even if the victim did not cooperate, you would write a report, correct?
Correct.
And we'll go to number 21. Officer Sines, this is just a picture. Do you recognize you and Officer Haddon here?
Yes, I do.
Okay, Officer Sines, is the timestamp on here of 9:19 p.m., 49 p.m., does that comport with your recollection of when you left?
I don't recall what time I left. I'm just going based on the video that is in front of me.
Okay, do you have any reason to believe that's incorrect?
I don't.
Officer Sines, I'm going to ask you to take a look at exhibit number 24. Okay. Do you recognize the person in this photo?
Yes, Amber Heard.
Okay. Do you perceive there to be an injury or evidence of injury on Amber's face in this photo?
No, I do not.
What is your perception of the redness on the cheek and the eyelid and above the eyebrow?
It's consistent. I observed her crying. She's fair-skinned. Her face is flushed.
I'm going to ask you to look at what has been marked as exhibit number 25. Do you recognize this as Amber Heard?
Yes, I do.
Do you see a red mark on Amber Heard's cheek and above her eyelid and above her eyebrow on this picture?
Her face looks flushed. Yes, redness.
Okay. And what is your perception of what that is caused by?
Like I said earlier, it's consistent with what I see in her crying.
Right. But you don't think it's consistent with a cell phone being thrown at her?
Correct. It does not look like an injury caused from a cell phone.
Okay. And why not?
Because it's consistent with somebody crying. Her face is flushed.
This was taken on May 21st. I'm going to ask you to look at what has been marked as exhibit number 26. Do you recognize this as Amber Heard?
Yes, I do.
Officer Sines, do you see any redness on Amber Heard's cheek and above her eyelid? And we'll go with those.
I do.
And what is your perception of what the cause of those is, those red marks?
It's consistent with her crying. Her face is flushed.
And is it fair to say that you do not believe that this reflects an injury?
Correct.
And would it also be fair to say that you would not consider it sufficient to investigate further, whether it's an injury?
There's nothing that would stop me from investigating. I would continue to ask her questions, and it's up to the victim if they want to cooperate.
But just so that we're clear here, even if the victim doesn't cooperate, if you see signs of injury, you still, and I believe you testified to this, believe yourself duty-bound to write a report, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But in your mind, you don't perceive this as to be reflective of an injury. Is that correct?
Correct.
And I'm going to ask you to take a look at exhibit number 27. Again, do you recognize this as Amber Heard?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you see redness on the cheek of Amber Heard on this one?
Yes, I do.
All right. And then you had testified on a number of these other pictures and on this one as well that this is consistent with crying. Do you see any redness on Amber's other cheek?
Yes, I do.
Is it the same or similar to the redness on the cheek, on the right cheek?
Based on this photo, it looks like one cheek is redder than the other.
But you also don't see any swelling with that?
Correct.
I'm going to ask you to take a look at what has been marked as exhibit number 28. Do you recognize this as Amber Heard?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And do you see redness on the right cheek and above the eye?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And is it your perception that this reflects any type of, or could reflect any type of injury?
No,
Why not?
because my perception is it was consistent with her crying.
All right, let's take this down, go to 29. I'm going to ask you the same questions. Do you recognize this as Amber Heard?
Yes,
And do you see any redness in the right cheek and above the eyelid?
yes,
Okay. And is it your perception that these are not indicative of injury?
yes.
And what is the reasoning?
It's consistent with her crying.
Let's take this one down. Let's go to number 30. Now, you testified earlier that you thoroughly searched the penthouse. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And Josh Drew, the gentleman that you called the generic male, actually took you through, escorted you through the penthouse and the series of penthouses, correct?
Correct.
Officer Science, did you or did you not thoroughly search the penthouses on May 21st, 2016?
We did search the penthouse.
Okay. And you used the term thoroughly, did you not?
I don't recall.
Okay. Do you feel like you conducted a thorough search of the penthouses that night?
Yes, I did. I did a sweep of the location for the suspect.
Okay. And when you're talking about a sweep of the location, did you go through every room?
Yes, every room.
Okay. And was there anyone escorting you through those rooms?
Yes, the same male that we were met with at the beginning of the call.
That you called the generic male, correct?
Correct.
Now, you also testified a little earlier that this was a very nice series of penthouses, right?
Yes,
Did you interview the woman that was sitting with Amber Heard?
I attempted to. All parties were uncooperative.
What did you say to the woman that was with Miss Heard?
I don't recall the exact words, but I introduced myself to everyone and asked if they seen what happened or know what happened, and they all refused to speak to me.
Did you ask for their names?
I recall, yes, I did ask for their names. Nobody would give me their names.
Now, that's a little unusual, isn't it?
No, it's not. A lot of people don't like us.
Well, is it that they don't like you, or is it potentially that they don't want to, with a domestic violence situation, are reluctant to press charges?
Every situation's different. Based on my training experience, where I work, it's usually that people do not like us.
Do you have a recollection of what the woman who was with Amber Heard looks like?
No recollection.
Do you know what color hair she had?
I have zero recollection.
So you don't recall how old she was, how tall she was, what her hairstyle was, what she was wearing, anything about her?
Zero recollection.
But somehow you're sure you tried to interview her and she refused to answer questions.
Yes, it's common practice. I try to interview everyone during my investigation.
So did you pull out your notebook at any time while you were in the penthouse?
I did not. I had nothing to write. No one would speak to me.
Well, how did you know that when you started asking the questions that they weren't going to give an answer?
Because they just looked at me.
But wouldn't you pull out your notebook first and then ask the questions? Then write down the answers as they're giving them to you?
No, I don't put anything in my hands for officer safety issues until I'm sure that I have something to write.
I'm sorry, officer. Can you repeat your answer?
I don't put anything in my hands for officer safety reasons. If I'm not sure I'm going to write, I keep my hands free. When I ask the questions, I got no answers. Therefore, I didn't take out any notebooks or pens.
Did you have any reason to fear for your safety at the time that you were talking with Amber Heard and the woman with her?
I always fear for my safety. A potential suspect could have been in the house, so yes, my guard was not down, if that's what you're asking.
What did you do first? Did you look at throughout the house to ensure that the person wasn't there, or did you ask the questions first and then look at the house?
I attempted to ask questions first. I can't just go into a house and start checking it without asking questions.
So what questions did you ask first?
I don't recall specific questions.
Do you recall any of your questions?
I don't.
Do you recall any of the answers that you were given?
I don't recall.
Now, we went through the domestic violence supplemental report and some of the guidelines for officers on domestic violence. Do you recall that the crime scene, a number of the items reflected location ransacked, location vandalized, furniture in disarray, personal property damage? Do you remember those being items as the checklist for crime scene for domestic violence?
As they pertain to domestic violence reports, yes, I do.
Right. Now, did you ever speak with the two officers who answered the second call to the townhouse that night?
I did not.
Did you ever communicate in any manner with the two officers who answered the second call to the penthouse?
I did not.
Did you communicate through a third party to the second set of officers relating to the domestic violence call and your determination?
I did not.
Did you know the two officers who responded to the second call?
Did not.
Sorry. Do you know who they are to this day?
I do not.
Have you ever spoken to the other two officers about the responding to this call on May 21st, 2016?
I have not.
Have you ever spoken with anyone else about your response and their response to this call on May 21st, 2016?
I have not.
And just so everybody's aware, up until now, you've been listening to questioning from Ms. Heard's counsel. At this point, I believe we're going to shift over to questioning from Mr. Depp's counsel.
I want you to focus on the date of the incident that we have been talking about during this deposition, and that is May 21st, 2016. I'll refer to that as the date of the incident. Do you understand what I mean when I say date of the incident?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So as of the date of the incident, for how long had you been a training officer?
Since, I believe, the end of November of 2015.
So between 6 to 8 months?
Yes.
Prior to the date of the incident, for how long had you been a training officer?
4 to 6 months.
Okay. And as of the date of the incident, approximately how many incidents of domestic violence had you come across?
I couldn't tell you. I believe you said hundreds.
Yes, that's how I understood it from testimony I read in previous depositions of yours. So it's in the hundreds?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you and you indicated that you proceeded to the incident at the Eastern Columbia building due to what you heard from dispatch, is that correct?
Correct.
And do you recall, as you sit here today, what you were told from dispatch that led you to the Eastern Columbia building on the date of the incident?
I don't have an independent recollection.
Okay. as you sit here today, do you recall that it had something to do with a dispute at that location?
Correct.
And when you first arrived at the scene of the incident, what did you first do on entering the building?
We met with a security guard in the lobby who escorted us to the elevator.
Did you ask that security guard any questions about the building? Sorry, did you ask that security guard any questions?
Not that I recall.
Did the security guard escort you up to the penthouse?
They gave us access through the elevator. I do not believe that they came up to the penthouse with us. I believe they just accessed the elevator.
Okay. And when you arrived at the penthouse and exited the elevator, was it just you and your partner, Mr. Haddon, Officer Haddon?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you do next?
We tried to listen for any kind of sounds of domestic violence. We checked the hallways. We didn't observe anyone. We went out to a courtyard, didn't observe anyone. And based on what I was just reminded of, there was a woman in the gym who didn't seem involved, was working out, looked fine, nothing out of the ordinary. And then we responded to a door in the hallway, and I knocked and was met by a male.
Okay. Up until that point in time, from exiting the elevator to knocking on that door, did you see anything that indicated a crime?
I did not.
Up until the point where you knocked on that door, did you see or hear or witness anything indicating that there had been a domestic violence perpetrated?
I did not.
Up until you knocked on that door, did you see anything which you would have considered out of the ordinary?
I did not.
And I guess what I'm asking is, walking from the elevator to the gym and then to the door that you knocked on, were you in the hallway?
Yes, I was in the hallway.
Okay. And during that time period from exiting the elevator through to knocking on the door, was there anything in the hallway that was unusual to you?
Not that I observed, no.
Did you see any stains on the floor?
Not that I recall.
Did you see any vandalism in that area?
No, I did not.
Did you see any broken glass in that area?
I did not.
Okay. And upon knocking on the door, what happened next?
A male opened the door. I don't remember the exact questions and conversation we had, but I remember asking if they called for help, and he said that it was the neighbor and that she was inside of his house apartment with his girlfriend. And I asked him if they could step out, and he told me to wait, and he shut the door. And we waited. We waited for them to exit. I don't remember how much time passed by, and they came out, and that's when we were met.
Did you hear anything that led you to believe that a crime had been committed?
I did not.
Up until that point in time, did you see anything that made you believe that a crime had been committed?
I did not.
Up until that point in time, did you hear anything that made you believe that there had been an act of domestic violence there?
I did not.
Up until that point in time, did you see anything that made you believe that there had been an act of domestic violence there?
I did not.
So you indicated that after you knocked on the door, you spoke with a gentleman. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you previously testified to someone as a generic white male. Is that the same person?
Yes.
So your previous testimony, when you were referring to a generic white male, that's the person who opened the door when you first knocked on it, correct?
Yes, there was only one male at the location besides my partner.
And there was only one male. Is that for the entire time you're at the location?
Yes.
So in the hall, you met with the generic white male, Ms. Heard, and the generic white male's girlfriend. Is that right?
Correct.
And it was just those three folks?
Correct.
And you were there with your partner, Officer Haddon?
Correct.
Okay. And how, in the hallway, how far were you standing from Ms. Heard?
It was close, probably like 2 to 5 feet.
Okay. And at that time, did you notice any injuries on Ms. Heard?
I did not.
Okay. Were you looking to see if she had any injuries at that time?
Yes, I was.
And so you were looking to see if Ms. Heard had any injuries, and you determined that she did not. Is that accurate?
Correct.
And was the lighting good enough in the hallway for you to make that determination?
Yes, the hallways was well lit.
Okay. And at the time, were you wearing any sort of corrective lenses?
I was not.
Although you were not wearing corrective lenses, were you prescribed corrective lenses at the time?
No, I have never worn glasses, and I'm not prescribed. I have good vision.
Okay. And at that time, did you have good vision?
Yes, I did.
At the time you were observing Ms. Heard, did you have good vision?
Yes, I did.
And did you observe any injuries at that time?
I did not.
What did you ask Ms. Heard at that time, if anything?
I don't have an independent recollection. Again, it's been so long. I don't remember specific questions.
Okay. Now, let me just back up a little bit. During the time period from when you left the elevator and when Ms. Heard came onto the hallway, at any time did the generic white male tell you that there had been an act of domestic violence?
No, he did not.
Did he tell you anything that made you think there may have been an act of domestic violence?
No, he did not.
Did he tell you anything that made you believe that a crime may have been committed?
No, he did not.
And during that time period, did you ask him what had happened or what was happening?
Yes, I did ask him, and he just refused to give me any information.
Okay. Okay. So now, fast forward to what we were talking about with respect to you in the hallway with the generic white male, Ms. Heard, and the generic white male's girlfriend. After you observed her and saw no sign of injury, what did you do next?
I advised her that we would be conducting a protective sweep just to make sure that there was no one else in the house. And she agreed if her neighbor, the male, could accompany us with the protective sweep.
Okay. Up until that point in time, did you ask Ms. Heard what happened?
Yes, I did.
And what was her response?
No response. She was uncooperative.
And Officer Stein, at that time, was Ms. Heard cooperative?
Ms. Heard was uncooperative.
Thank you. And by uncooperative, does that mean that when you asked her a question, she wouldn't say a word? Did she say something that made you think she was not cooperating?
She wouldn't say anything.
But just to be clear, you would ask questions and she wouldn't say anything.
Correct.
And what did you do at that point?
After the protective sweep, I asked her again if she wanted to talk to me, if anything happened. Again, I don't remember the specific questions that I asked her, but I asked her questions to establish if there was some sort of crime, who was involved, and again, she wouldn't give me any information. I attempted to ask her friend, the other woman in the room. I even asked the males to wait in the hallway so it could just be us women in there so we could talk privately. Maybe she felt more comfortable that way. Still, they denied that there was any crime. They wouldn't answer any specific questions. So I wrote a business card. I advised her if she changed her mind that she could call us at any time and we would respond to help her out.
So backing up a bit to the time you were in the hallway with the three of them, and you testified that Ms. Heard was uncooperative, and then you indicated you did a sweep. I want to start with from the point of time in the hallway where she was uncooperative, transitioning to the sweep. How did that occur? Did you ask her if you could look in the penthouses? How did you go from standing in the hallway to conducting a sweep?
I don't recall.
Now, before you swept the penthouses, did you ask if you could enter the penthouses?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And what was the response?
I can't remember if she gave me a response or nodded her head. I can't remember.
From what you observed or heard from Ms. Heard, you took it that she was permitting you to enter the penthouses and look around. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay. Was it more than one penthouse?
There was two.
Okay. And this term sweep we've been using, is that a technical police officer term?
Yeah.
What do you mean by conducting a sweep?
It's called a protective sweep, and we do so to make sure that there's no other individuals that may be victims that are hurt inside of the location, or suspects hiding, concealing themselves from officers that would attack the victim after we left the location. So we go in to verify that any potential suspects are gone from the location for the victim's safety.
Thank you. And you conducted a protective sweep of two penthouses, correct?
Correct.
What was your understanding of who owned or lived in the first penthouse that you performed a protective sweep on?
It was my understanding that Amber Heard, that it was her home. Again, the gentleman directed us. That's why he came with us, so we wouldn't get lost.
I see. And during your protective sweep during the first penthouse, did anybody accompany you during the entire sweep?
Yes, the only male that was there besides my partner.
Okay. And your partner conducted the sweep with you?
Correct.
Okay. And as to the protective sweep of the first penthouse, did you go into every room of the penthouse?
To my knowledge, yes.
And was your knowledge based on the generic white male leading you around?
Correct.
Was it your understanding that your protective sweep included you looking in every room in the penthouse?
Correct.
During the protective sweep of the first penthouse, did you see anything that led you to believe that a crime had been committed?
I did not.
During the protective sweep of the first penthouse, did you hear anything that made you think a crime had been committed?
I did not.
During the first protective sweep, did you see anything that made you think that an act of domestic violence had occurred?
I did not.
During the protective sweep of the first penthouse, did you hear or see anything? Did you hear or see anything that made you believe an act of domestic violence had occurred?
I did not.
Okay. Upon your completion of the sweep, protective sweep of the first penthouse, up until that point in time, from you exiting the elevator up until that point in time, did you hear or see anything that made you believe that a crime had been committed?
I did not.
Up until that point in time, did you hear or see anything that made you think an act of domestic violence had occurred?
I did not.
Now, I want to ask you, you testified that to you viewing Ms. Heard and not seeing any signs of injury. Did you view her again after that first viewing?
During the interviews and throughout the entire investigation, I'm constantly scanning her and watching. So if I see any other observations that would indicate any injury or domestic violence.
And did you see anything like that?
I did not.
And you didn't see, did you see anything like that during the entire time period that you were on that call? And do you believe that you had enough time viewing Ms. Heard to determine whether or not she had sustained any injuries?
Yes, I do.
And did you determine that she sustained any injuries?
I determined that she did not sustain any injuries.
So other than the conversation you had with her in the hallway when you first got there, did you have any other conversations with Ms. Heard?
I did. Inside of the loft or penthouse, sorry.
Okay. Was that before or after the protective sweep?
I believe both, before and after. I attempted.
Okay. How many separate conversations did you have with Ms. Heard?
I don't recall.
Okay. There was at least the one in the hallway, and there was one before or after the protective sweep, correct? I'm sorry, I missed that answer.
Correct.
Okay. And during the second conversation you had with her after the one in the hallway, how close were you to her?
The same, 2 to 5 feet. She was right in front of me.
Were you close enough to get a good view to determine whether or not she had any injuries?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And during that second conversation, did you determine whether or not she had any injuries?
I determined that she did not have any injuries.
Okay. At any point in time during the incident, during the date of the incident, did she complain of any injuries?
She did not.
During the protective sweep of the penthouse, did you see anything in disarray?
I did not.
Okay. Now, you indicated, let me ask you, did you do a protective sweep of the second penthouse?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did the generic white male accompany you on that sweep as well?
Yes, he did.
What was your understanding of who owned or resided in that second penthouse?
I had no idea.
Okay. Did you, during that second protective sweep, did you walk through every room in that penthouse?
From my understanding, yes, we did.
Okay. And during that second protective sweep, did you see anything that you would say was in disarray?
I did not.
During that second protective sweep, did you see anything that made you believe there had been a crime committed?
I did not.
During that second protective sweep, did you hear anything that made you think a crime had been committed?
I did not.
During your protective sweep of the second penthouse, did you see anything that made you believe an act of domestic violence had occurred?
I did not.
During the protective sweep of the second penthouse, did you hear or see anything that made you believe a crime had been committed?
I did not.
After you performed the protective sweep of the second penthouse, what did you do?
I re-responded to where Amber Heard was, and I again tried to see if I could get any information from her. I was unsuccessful, and then I issued her the business card and let her know that she could call us back if she wanted to talk.
Did she answer any of your questions?
No, she did not.
At any point in time during the entirety of the incident, did Ms. Heard answer any of your questions?
No, she did not.
During the entire time of the incident, did Ms. Heard complain of any injuries?
No, she did not.
During the entirety of your time at the incident, did anybody say anything that made you believe a crime had been committed?
No, they did not.
During the entirety of the time you were at the incident, did anybody say anything that made you believe an act of domestic violence had occurred?
No, they did not.
Okay. During the entirety of your time at the incident, did you see anything that made you believe a crime had occurred?
I did not.
During the entirety of your time at the incident, did you hear anything that made you believe a crime had been committed?
I did not.
During the entirety of your time at the incident, did you hear or see anything that made you believe an act of domestic violence had occurred?
I did not.
Had you heard of anybody by the name of Miss Heard at that time?
Never.
Amber Heard?
No, I have never heard of Amber Heard before that time.
Okay. Did you recognize any of the people that you encountered during the incident?
I did not.
At the time of the incident, did you have any reason to believe that anybody you encountered at the incident was famous?
I did not.
Okay. And during the entire time that you were at the penthouses during the incident, did you have any reason to believe that Mr. Depp was affiliated or involved in the incident?
I did not.
Madam Reporter, can you repeat my last question? I lost where I was.
Question, during the entire time you were at the penthouses during the incident, did you witness any bruises on Miss Heard? And there was not a response.
I did not observe any injuries on Miss Heard.
Okay. Did you observe any swelling on Miss Heard's face?
I did not.
Did you observe anything that led you to believe that she was a victim of domestic violence?
I did not.
Alex, if you can pull up Exhibit 2.
So was this going to be Exhibit 57?
Yes. Officer Sines, do you recall having your deposition taken on July 18th, 2016 in connection with Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall giving testimony in connection with that deposition under oath? Is it yes? I'm sorry, officer.
Yes.
Okay. And did you give accurate and true testimony at that time?
Yes.
Okay. And you understood you were under oath, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Alex, if you can go to page 26. Officer Sines, do you recall testifying as to, that, and I'm talking about today, do you recall just testifying that you can't recall what Ms. Heard said to you, if anything?
I do not have an independent recollection, but I can go off what I'm seeing here on my screen.
Okay.
Your Honor, we're at 5 o'clock. It looks like we have about 18 minutes left. Do you want to?
You don't have any problem finishing it tonight, do you? Let's go ahead and finish it. Okay. Thank you.
And do you agree with me that your memory of the day of the incident was fresher on July 18, 2016 than it is today?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And the incident was May 21st, 2016. This deposition was taken July 18th, 2016. How long after the incident was this deposition taken?
A few months.
Okay. And Alex, if I could have control. A little delayed, Alex. Can that be fixed, or is that just the way it is?
This is Alex speaking. Yeah, I'm afraid I can't help that. I'm sorry, Mr. Preciado.
That's fine. Officer Sines, I'm going to start here. Do you see my cursor?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I'm going to start here at line 3. The question is, okay, so we'll get back to that. Before you did a sweep or a check of the rest of the penthouse, did you have an opportunity to speak with Ms. Heard when you were in the apartment? Answer, yes, I did. Okay, question, okay, can you tell us about that conversation? Answer, sure. I asked her what happened. Opening question. She said nothing, and she continued to cry. I said, who do you live with? Who do you live here with? She shook her head as if she did not want to answer. I asked her, are you hurt? Do you need an ambulance? And she shook her head again, no. At that point, I asked her if she would mind if I checked her apartment. And that's when she said no. Officer, does this refresh your recollection of the conversation you had with Ms. Heard at that time?
Yes, it does.
And your testimony that I just read, is that true and accurate?
Yes, it is.
During the entire time period you were at the penthouses on May 21st, 2016, did Ms. Heard say that she had been assaulted in any way by anybody?
No, she did not.
during your protective sweep of the 2 penthouses, did you view anything that you would characterize as vandalism?
I did not.
During the entire time you were at the penthouses on May 21st, 2016, were you looking for any probable cause to believe that a crime had been committed?
Yes, I was.
And what did you determine?
I determined there was no crime.
What did you determine with respect to an assessment of probable cause?
There was no probable cause of any sort of crime.
Thank you. During the entire time you were at the penthouses on May 21st, 2016, were you wearing any body-worn video cameras?
I was not.
Are you certain of that?
I am certain.
And how is it that you are certain of that?
Because I didn't start using body-worn video until June of 2016.
And that's after the date of the incident, correct?
Correct.
Alex, if you wouldn't mind putting Exhibit 9 back up. Officer Sines, you were shown this document earlier. What is this document?
It is a domestic violence supplemental report.
And do you recall counsel asked you about the victim column and the crime scene column?
Yes, I do recall.
Do you also see that there's a suspect column in the middle?
Yes.
Okay. And is there any difference between the victim column and the suspect column with respect to the box terms?
No difference.
Okay. Did you fill out one of these forms in connection with your investigation on May 21st, 2016?
I did not.
Why not?
Because it was determined there was no crime.
And Officer Sines, just one more question with respect to that Exhibit 9. I know it's not up, but the fact that you did not fill out that form, is that consistent with your training?
Yes, it is. I wouldn't fill that out because there was no crime. It's not called for.
When you testified during the London trial, at the time, did you believe your testimony was accurate?
Yes, I do.
At all times, you've testified under remainder of, in any legal proceedings, trials, depositions, do you always give accurate and truthful testimony?
Yes, I do.
And do you have any reason to not give accurate and truthful testimony in connection with this deposition?
I do not.
Officer Sines, do you see these two pictures?
Yes, I do.
Do you recognize the person in the pictures?
Yes, Amber Heard?
In both pictures?
Yes.
Okay, do you see a difference in these two pictures, between these two pictures?
Yes, I do, the lighting of the photos.
Okay. Do you see any difference in connection with the redness on the cheeks of Ms. Heard as between these two pictures?
Yes, I do. The left side is, the photo's brighter.
Okay. And other than that, would you agree with me that these two pictures are the same? In other words, Ms. Heard's face, the position of her face, everything about her in these pictures is identical except for the differences that you've indicated?
Yes.
Okay. And even though these are the same pictures, do you see any difference with respect to the redness on Ms. Heard's face with respect to the two pictures?
Yes, the photo on the left is brighter, causing the redness on the cheeks to what appears to be brighter or exaggerated.
What does it say with respect to, let's concentrate on the picture on the left. Can you read for me what it says in the little box at the very top on the left, under add a title? Do you see a date and a timestamp?
Yes, I see it.
What's it say? Date and timestamp?
Date is May 21st, 2016. Timestamp is 9:25:12 p.m.
And now let's look at the other picture, Exhibit 29, at the same spot. Can you read for me what the timestamp says there?
Yes, it says May 21st, 2016, 9:25:12 p.m.
So both exhibits, both pictures have the same exact timestamp, correct?
Correct.
And even though that's the case, do you still believe that there's a difference between the two pictures as you previously described?
Yes, I do.
Signs, do you see Exhibit 41?
Yes.
Do you recall counsel asking you questions
Yes.
during your protective sweep of the two penthouses on May 21st, 2016? Did you see anything in disarray?
No.
Officer Sines, I think you answered this, but up until the present, for how long have you been a LA, Los Angeles police officer?
I will be going on 12 years.
Officer Sines, in connection with your investigation at the Eastern Columbia building on May 21st, 2016, were you in a rush in any way to complete the investigation?
No.
Were you willing to stay as long as necessary to determine if a crime had been committed?
Yes.
At any point in time during your investigation on May 21st, 2016 at the penthouses, did Ms. Heard ask you to file a report?
No.
Did anybody that you spoke with or saw on May 21st, 2016 at the penthouses ask you to file a report?
No.
Did you have any cause to file a report?
No.
And was that determination in line with your training?
Yes.
If you had witnessed anything that led you to believe that an act of domestic violence had occurred, would you have filed a report?
Yes.
And you, in fact, did not file a report, correct?
Yes. Correct.
And if you had witnessed something that led you to believe that an act of domestic violence had occurred, would you have filed a report even if Ms. Heard had asked you not to?
Yes.
And is that in line with your training?
Yes.
Officer Sines, you were asked some questions.
And just so everybody's on the same page, we have about a minute and a half of questions from Ms. Heard's counsel at this point.
When you were got off the elevator in the penthouse and when you got on, and how much time you spent at the penthouse level, I approached it in my earlier, but based on the cross-examination, I feel like we need to go back to that. So I'm going to ask you to take a look at what is exhibit number 6. And you recognize you and Officer Haddon in this picture?
Yes.
Okay. And what time does the timestamp on this picture say for the elevator?
It says 21:04:43.
Okay, that's 9:04:43. Would that be right, PM?
Yes.
And we looked at this earlier. I'm going to ask you to take a look at it again at 21. And so this one has what time?
21:19:49.
All right. And allowing for, and Officer Sines, you said earlier that you weren't sure whether there were accuracies or inaccuracies in terms of the elevators. But allowing for that there may be any issues at all, would you agree that it still means that you were on and off that elevator in 15 minutes?
Assuming the times are correct, yes.
Okay. You were asked to look at a number of the pictures that I had shown you earlier that were taken on the night of May 21st, 2016, both before, during, and after the time that you and Officer Haddon had reported to to Ms. Heard's penthouse. Do you recall seeing those again and being asked about them?
Yes.
You were asked by counsel for Mr. Depp to take a look at those again, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And he asked you if you had seen any of those photographs before, and you indicated that you had not, correct?
Correct.
So, other than what was placed in the CAD summary by either you or Officer Haddon, and then also went into the incident recall, are you aware of any documentation that either you or Officer Haddon collected relating in any manner to your visit to the penthouse on May 21, 2016?
No.
All right, thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the testimony for today. Please do not do any outside research and don't talk to anybody about the case, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. Okay, thank you. I still have some outstanding exhibits, so if you could get with Jamie and see which ones those are, so we can get that taken care of, so we don't get backwards and keep up, all right? All right, we'll see you in the morning. All right, thank you.
Woo, everybody, this has been a long day, and we're going to recap tomorrow morning. We'll be back tomorrow morning. The court is over. That was an extensive cross-examine, and is, by Officer Melissa Signs, both Johnny Depp's attorneys and Melissa Hurt attorney questioned the officer. We'll talk about it. We'll probably try to get in maybe 5 or 10 minutes before 10 tomorrow morning before court starts. Please like, share, and subscribe so you can see the notification that will be in and be on tomorrow morning. But it was a day, but we'll talk tomorrow morning. All right, everybody. We thank you so much for joining us.